Thank you so much. I think 70% of us are here already. Thank you for respecting the timelines. And I think we're back online now. We're live again. So, since we're live again, let's make a little less noises now and focus on. Right, so I think we're getting popular online now because more and more viewers are joining us. They didn't go by the program, I think, now that the speakers are really impressing the audience, I think, and we are getting more viewers now. So, right, as we promised that we are going to resume at 10:45, and then we will be starting with a very interesting session on where is the name? Mindfulness and well-being for physicians and the impact on clinical outcomes. I invite Dr. Babita Jayapal and Dr. Madhuri Vediswar for the same. And right. So can we have Dr. Babita Jayapal and Dr. Madhuri Vediswar for the session 4 interactive session on mindfulness and well-being for physicians and the impact on clinical outcomes. And I request all our delegates to please settle down now and can you please have some silence? Thank you. Over to you. Thank you. So is it going to be a joint session? It's going to be. Oh, great, great. Oh, okay. Okay, even Dr. Mrs. Usha would join us. Great. Thank you so much. Over to you. Yeah? Slides? Yeah.
स्लाइड्स अभी ये टेबल है तो अभी
हाँ ठीक है वो ज़्यादा हाँ short half an hour.
I'll let you know. Maybe there'll be, no, maybe there'll be delays in inaugural also. So we can continue. I'll give you a heads up like 10 minutes before.
So what we do is,
Yeah.
to your side, so bring the people in our shift session.
Okay.
Then she'll come back for one slide and have another interaction. So be flexible.
So I'll give you 10 minutes before wrapping up. I'll let you know.
We can do a plan.
Okay, fine, fine. Good morning. Everybody in? Because this is a session for you, not for the patients.
Good morning and welcome to a session on mindfulness and well-being for holistic care of physicians, enhancing clinical outcomes. Do you feel this is the need of the hour? Yes. So let's understand what is mindfulness, what is well-being, and after I speak, there are going to be some extremely enriching interactive sessions and some deep relaxation because we've had a heavy load since morning. Yeah. So in today's fast-paced world, where healthcare professionals undergo a lot of stress and burnout, so incorporating mindfulness and focusing on well-being becomes a necessity. You agree? Right? So let us explore how physicians can use mindfulness as an important tool to help their own well-being as well as that of the patients. Next. So I call it the physician's dilemma because we as physicians are faced with demanding schedules, heavy workloads, and very important, an emotional toll of taking care of our patients, especially we as homeopaths. These challenges can impact our well-being, in turn affect clinical outcomes. What if there was a way to navigate through this dilemma? Now, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a word being used a lot nowadays. You say yoga, you say meditation, we are all well versed with these two terms. But mindfulness is relatively new. So what is actually mindfulness? It's more than just a buzzword. It's the practice of being fully present and engaged in the here and now without any judgments. It offers a path to enhanced self-awareness and resilience. What's a mindful physician? Becoming a mindful physician involves integrating mindfulness practices in your daily life. It's about creating compassion, empathy, and building deep connections with your patients. But how can this actually translate into better clinical outcomes? Patient communication, I think a very important aspect in our kind of treatment. Mindfulness can transform the way we communicate with our patients. Being fully present in the conversations, actively listening and understanding the patient's perspective can lead to a more accurate diagnosis and obviously better patient outcomes. Stress reduction. Chronic stress can compromise our decision-making abilities and obviously our overall health. Deep practices like meditation and deep breathing can help us manage this stress, resulting in clearer thinking and more effective clinical care. Self-compassion. We often hold ourselves in very high standards. Mindfulness fosters self-compassion, allowing us to treat ourselves with the same kindness that we show towards our patients. So there's a question I want to ask you, how many times we put our patients' needs before us? I think we are always doing that. And we also need to learn self-care, because if we are taking care of ourselves, then we can look after our patients better. Now, integrating mindfulness in your daily routine may seem challenging, but it's possible. So let's explore some practical strategies and techniques to make mindfulness a part of your life. Now, beyond clinic, we are also looking at how mindfulness can enrich our personal life. So we'll explore how to apply mindfulness to our relationships, to our daily routines, and to our overall sense of well-being. This may seem really challenging in our daily routines, in our heavy schedules, but it's possible. So let's explore some strategies and techniques to make mindfulness a part of our daily routine. So from my side, thank you, and I welcome Mrs. Usha to take you through an interactive session on mindfulness and well-being, which will be followed with a more intense deep breathing and relaxation so that we can be present to our next session. Thank you.
Little dim it can. In between it, yeah, they can. You're all comfortable with this visual stimuli rather? Okay. Ma'am, I didn't get your name, doctor. Dr. Divya started the session actually speaking. This is how it works. Our energy convey what we need to the universe and it gets manifested. This is the basis of our intervention also which we are trying to bring in. This is again one kind of awareness about the universal energy, energy interaction, connections, and also universal aspect because spiritual aspect of living. Whichever intervention has all these components, that is, I'm not the one who control the situation, awareness about that. The second thing is, I'm a part of the universe, okay? And the third thing is, I always, as long as I'm in sync with the universe, my thoughts get manifested. And as a therapist, either as an allopathic doctor or a homeopathic doctor, as a psychotherapist, if I try to incorporate this awareness in my intervention, I think I can definitely reach out to the patients or the clients. Not only to them, I help myself also. Because the best part of any therapy is like teaching. When I teach, I learn the subject better. So with this simple note, let us, but again, very significant note, let us start this session, which is going to be, I'm trying my level best to impart the understanding about mindfulness. How can we achieve that? I'm just making an effort because it is again a process of energy exchange. Whatever I'm trying to convey, it should reach you and you should reciprocate that. Then only there is a balance in this energy equation. Shall we start? Okay, so the mindfulness. Take a deep, close your eyes, all of you. Sit in a very relaxed posture of your choice. It can be legs crossed, not necessarily in a meditative posture. Wherever you feel like you can rest your back or you can put your feet down, whatever it is. Now, take a deep breath. And as and when I start naming the body parts, make a note of that particular body part, how it is and in what contact it is there. Hands, palms. How are your palms? Fingers, are they spread out, folded, interlocked? Make a note of all that. Your feet, take your focus to the feet. Are they touching the ground? Or one leg is crossed over the other leg? They are moving. One foot is swaying. Take a note of that. Please note there is nothing like correct and not correct posture. It is just being aware of my own body parts. What are they doing and how are they? Your back, is it touching the chair? Is it erect, straight, or it is sluggish? Is the spinal cord straight or it is crooked? Now take your focus to the neck. Is it stiff? It is relaxed. There is an irritation in the throat, a small cough, a dryness. It can be anything, but be aware of that experience. Then take your focus to the shoulders. Are your shoulders relaxed? Or it is stiff? Is there any kind of pain in the shoulder or a strain in your shoulders? While doing this, please keep breathing and focusing your mind on the breathing style also. Is it a shallow breathing or a deep breathing? Then focus more on your breathing now. Inhale and exhale. Now do it with counting. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Second time, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now take your focus to the abdomen part, tummy part. Feel the muscle tension there. Are they relaxed or tensed up? Then with the help of the deep breathing, try to relax them if you find any stress there. Breathe in, breathe out. Yes. Now I'll snap my fingers, open your eyes. Yeah, please open your eyes. How did you all feel? You are in sync with your body parts, right? This is what is mindfulness is all about. But the question is, ma'am, you gave a session of 5 minutes separately and you asked me to be mindful of my body reactions. How do I do simultaneously when I am in the process of treating a patient for myself, as well as when my patient is going through a lot of trauma or stress or anxiety during a treatment session? For that, we will do one small exercise, okay, one small activity. I'll just ask one question. I'll first pick up the volunteers, because once I put the question, volunteers' hands come down. So let me do it the other way. Who can volunteer for this? 3 hands, please. Yes, Dr. Hadley. Okay, then you? Yeah? Okay. Can you have the mic? Can we have the mic with them, please? Okay, we have 3 doctors from the audience. This is the first step in emotional regulation skills training, which we train our clients with to tackle with their anxiety and stress, okay? Doctor, what is the thought and what is the feeling you have at this minute? That is your thought, okay. She is worried about the chief guest appearance. That is her thought, feeling. Okay. A bit of a mild anxious. Okay. Now, going a little deeper into that. This is because of the environmental contributor or your own personal need? Interesting. Okay. Now, coming to you, doctor. You raise your hands or I'm forcefully making you? Okay. What is your thought now? That is feeling. What is your thought? My God, no. As long as I'm alive, feelings may change. Once in a while, it may take a break when I'm sleeping, but thoughts will be there 24/7. When I'm aware, I'm a conscious thought, subconscious thoughts, semi-conscious thoughts. There are different areas. So, what is your thought? Okay. Thinking about what is going to happen next. Okay. Feelings. Relaxed feeling. Very nice. So that means I'm not threatening. Okay, that's very nice. Okay. So with this is the first step. We all fail to segregate our thoughts from the feelings. And in that process, at what cost we are not doing that? See, the actions related to or triggered by feelings are entirely different. And the actions or the behavior or the communications which has a thought as the trigger is entirely different. So if at all I have to modify my actions, I need to find out what is the trigger behind it specifically. If feelings are generating my behavior, communication, it will be loaded with emotions. And in an interpersonal relationship, maybe the other party is not at all emotionally affected, and for him or her, I come across as a person who's intensely talking, which is not required. And that in turn will generate some other series of emotions. So it all leads to unwanted communication and the load on that communication part, okay, which could have been a jovial or a very casual interaction can turn into a very intense communication. Suppose my action behavior is triggered by my thought of my previous experience that last time when I was with this person, he put me down so strongly. I don't like this person is my thought. That was in my past. But that thought was the prevailing thought, major thought. Then now I become very cautious when I interact with that person, or I will go with a very defense mechanism. This time let him try to put me down. I already am anticipating. I'm going to give him back rightly. Do we do this or not? We do this. So our thoughts and feelings have direct impact on our emotional relationship, interpersonal relationship, and also intrapersonal relationship. That is relationship with myself. What do I mean by intrapersonal is where I start judging myself. Lot of anxiety is created when people become very, very self-critic or judgmental about themselves. Forget about world judging them. I start judging myself. Then my life becomes very miserable. So once I start doing this exercise of segregating or separating or drawing a line between my thoughts and feelings, my first step in emotional regulation is started. Am I clear? Any questions on this? No. Okay. Now the third activity, mindfulness, to come up with some relaxation technique for ourselves, because as I said, anxiety and stress are part of our living. Starting from cradle to grave, we do carry that all along. It's a package of life, okay? Having said that, how do I relax myself, ground myself, is the one technique we all need to do as practitioners more, but as a general human being, we need to develop these coping up mechanisms, because challenges come unnoticed. The beauty of challenges, they come unnoticed. I can't be always prepared, planned, like a program on a computer, right? So I need to keep my whole self prepared for this. So what do I do this? One is breathing exercise, where as practitioners, before I or we enter the session, we need to be aware of our own stress levels. Am I carrying any stress from the family or from any other areas to my session? So make it as a thumb rule or the basics check, self-check, wherein you will be aware of your own breathing pattern whenever you are stressed out. So when you enter the session with your patient, when we enter the session with a patient, we will know that my stress level are stabilized. They are at the proper level, because any kind of interaction, whether it is hospital environment or treatment session, clinical session, or in general session, it is nothing but energy exchange, right? We are exchanging energy now at the end of the day. So what kind of energy I am carrying into the session is very, very important. If I am only carrying very intense energy, I can't expect my patient to be very much calm and approachable. So we all have to make a practice of noticing our own breathing pattern when I am stressed out or when I am calmer. And make it a habit, when I enter into the clinic room, I need to take note of my breathing style. For that, in our Walden system, if you go through our Walden system, there are beautiful practices. Unfortunately, it was given as a religious practice or some kind of cultural practice, but actually they all have scientific background for that. So when you enter in our olden days, before you start any task, we were supposed to pray to the God. Here we make it very religious, right? But actually it is not so. That is the moment where you are trying to be in sync with the universe, trying to calm yourself down. So it can be of anything. Just closing our eyes for 2 minutes, focusing on our breathing calms us down and makes us well prepared to face the situation of the session. Because the clients are definitely going to bring hell lot of negative emotions, energy to the session. So we need to be very stable before we address that. That is one practice which usually helps. Second thing is having water, sipping water in between the session. It has helped me a lot. It has helped many therapists also, because water has a natural tendency of calming us down. So that is one thing. Now, coming to another grounding approach, technique is that we ask patients to carry one favorite object of their interest. It can be as simple as a pebble or some idol of their choice, or something which is very dear to their heart, that kind of a small particle, article or the object in their purse or the pocket. And we tell the patients, whenever you feel anxious, just touch them. Close your eyes, touch them for 2 minutes, and give auto suggestions that everything is going to be fine. And when we can tell it to a person who is very much energetically or emotionally disturbed, just imagine how it will help to people like us who are aware of it, who are supposed to be aware of it. So we all need to find out which is one thing which calms us down. It can be a mild music playing in the background, and also removing the chappal when you sit for the session, grounding your feet on the ground, that also helps a lot. So these are all the simple but doable, practical practices to create mindfulness in ourselves as therapists. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about mindful listening. Okay, so when we talk about mindful listening, there are a couple of concepts, right? So one is, some of you might have heard of this, there's something called a 6-hat thinking in management that they use, right? That is, when we're using our thinking and our analytical skills, from which perspective are we thinking? So when we apply this to mindful listening, we are going to look at from which perspective are we listening. So what does this mean? So for example, we are so conditioned to listening to, sitting in our clinics and listening to our patients. When you go home, you're visiting family, your parents or, somebody, and they say, Arey, pav dukh raha hai, I have some pain, I have something else. Maybe they're not looking for a remedy or advice. Maybe they're just trying to get your attention. But immediately we jump in with advice or we jump in with a remedy and say, now let's move on. Right? So this is where we fail to practice mindful listening. We fail to practice switching roles. Right? So if you listen the same way that you listen to a patient, if you start listening to your children, that is also going to be a problem. Right? As a psychotherapist, if you take that home with you and say, I'm going to listen to what's happening at home in this way, it is going to be a problem. Let's do a small exercise. Okay? So what sort of groups do we have? Okay, so let's just pick each table, one person volunteer, you don't have to get up. Each table, pick one person, okay, who's going to share 2 things. First, you just share with the rest of the people on your table one thing that has been bothering you for the past 2-3 days or the past 1 week. Something, mild headache, sleepless. A lot of people are very happy. Oh, I'm getting to tell symptoms. Huh? Okay, and the rest of you are going to listen mindfully. Okay, now each person in the table pick a role. One person is going to listen as a physician. One person is going to listen as a friend. Okay, and one more person is going to listen as, say, a relative, like a parent or a child or somebody or a some family member. Okay, pick your roles. Okay, who's going to speak at each table? Just hands up. Just put your hand up. Please, come on, participation. We can't do this session with slides. TK, you can adapt. We're just doing it as a, or you can always join. Please, why don't you just join that table? It'll make things simpler for us. That table. Yeah, they can join you. No. No. I'll tell you the rules of sharing. I'm so happy with the participation, full enthusiasm. As soon as you can tell us, a problem to somebody, there's full enthusiasm. free psychotherapy मिल जाएगा आज. Yes. Yeah, so this is a very interesting point. So everybody wants to be listened to, right? Okay, so everybody set? Okay, before you start, here are the rules of sharing, okay? It cannot be a past, like this is not a psychotherapy, full 2-day workshop, which we will do at some point, and then you can actually share, and then Usha will actually like tell you how to go through it. But right now, you're going to share a very simple problem you have faced for the past few days or weeks. Please don't make it too deep, too traumatic, too much pathology involved. Let's avoid all that. Okay? Yeah, that's first thing. Second thing, the conversation cannot go into my neighbor's dog, my aunt's kid, okay? The boatman and his problems, okay? So that cannot happen. It has to be something just to do with you. Now the rest of you, listen mindfully, okay? So again, pick your roles. Who's going to be the physician? Easiest one. Don't give advice. Physician, passive physician, okay? So physician being psychotherapist and just listening, not jump in with, I got the modalities, now my remedy is ready. Can you mindfully say, put that away, right? Because I think the biggest challenge here is professionally we are so trained to listen and react. Listen, I processed information, I'm reacting, listen, right? But the problem happens outside of the clinical scenario when we just need, the spouse comes home and says, I had a tough day at work. Oh, remedy de do? You don't want that reaction. You just want to say, oh, is it? Oh, okay. Do you want a glass of water? Do you want a cup of chai? Sometimes we just bring our work also back home and we're applying this everywhere. So this is the whole idea, okay? So you're all ready? Who's the person sharing at every table? Just put your hands up. You have Okay. So what we're going to do is there are going to be 2 steps here. One, okay, there are going to be 2 steps. First, the person who shares, shall we give them what? 3 minutes? 4 minutes? 3 minutes, okay, fine. So the person who's going to share their problem, it's going to be a 3-minute share, okay? After that, each person, so you're not going to question, you're not going to draw out modalities, draw out causation, frequency, none of that, okay? You're not going to investigate, okay? After that, we'll do 3 minutes, then I'll tell you what the rules of engagement of the other people are. In this session, nobody else is going to talk other than the person who's sharing, okay? You are allowed to use non-verbal communication, which is supportive, okay? What is non-verbal communication which is supportive? You can do all that. You can show emotion, but non-verbally, okay? Sorry? Yeah, the other roles are physician, one person in a family, and a very good friend, okay? A supportive friend, okay? You've picked those roles? Yeah? All right, are we ready to go? Let's start. Wait, I need a phone timer. Okay, I will start the timer, you can start. Go ahead. We have 1 more minute to go. You have to share until then and listen. Mindful, calm being together. Oh, a lot of people seem to be done sharing, huh? Just 30 seconds more. Okay, everybody's done? Everybody seems to be done. Okay, so then we'll go on. Everybody's done? Yeah? Okay. So, couple of things with... Okay, all right. So, now, what I want you to do before we go into any analysis is, now the person who was listening as the physician is going to get just 30 seconds to be supportive and say something which is not giving a prescription. Okay? 30 seconds to say something supportive to this person about the problem they shared. Okay? It cannot be remedy or prescription based. Okay? Alright? Timer, can we do? Yeah, you can start. Yes, it's done. Oh my God, only so much time to give advice. Huh? If only we could finish our clinical consultations like this, no? 30 seconds. Okay. Now it is the family member's turn. Okay. 30 seconds again to give any advice, anything, comfort, solace, solution, whatever you have in mind. 30 seconds. Ready? Yeah? Start. Yes, done. Done, done, done. You have to stop, especially family members, keep talking, no? Okay, now, as the close friend, whoever was playing that role, yeah? So, 30 seconds to give advice. Ready? Yeah? Okay, start. Yes, it's done. Okay. All right. So, okay, now I want you to just reflect upon the experience. Okay. So the first thing in mindful listening, the non-mindful listening happened was at this table with Dr. Harleen on the phone. Because she's handling the inauguration, we're going to be okay with it. But being on your phone while somebody in your friends, family circle is sharing is not being mindful. Agreed? Yes? Yeah. And most of us are not mindful most of the time. Agreed? Yeah? You've been at clinic for non-stop for a few hours, you've barely checked your messages, you get home, your spouse or children are waiting to talk to you, and you are constantly listening like this. Correct? Yeah? So, if this is something that you feel, could impact your communication, your relationship, sometimes listening to our own children, we're going to be talking a lot about, even mental health in adolescence tomorrow. You might have kids who are going into that age or who are that age. Are we listening mindfully enough? It's one thing to be very effective in our clinical advice. yeah, we understand you have an inauguration to handle. So it's one thing to, give our patients very, good advice clinically, but actually coming back and implementing a lot of that for ourselves is extremely challenging. Yes? Okay. So now, when you think back about the experience, are there any observations that you would like to share? Anything that anybody would like to share? What happened? I mean, it was quite a different scenario, isn't it? Didn't you have to fight yourself from, like, you want to say something, but I'm saying, oh, I can't say it. Yeah, you want to give a solution, but you're holding yourself back. Yeah, you want to ask certain questions and elicit certain information, but you're saying, oh, wait, I'm a family member, I'm not supposed to do this. Yeah? Yeah, exactly, correct? So, any other challenges, like what did you feel? What was the internal reaction? Did you realize that there are different ways to listen? Right? Different hats we wear. As a physician, if I'm listening to something, it's going to be a different analytical process than if I'm listening as a parent or as a spouse or as a close friend, right? Yeah. So this was something to reflect upon, yeah? Maybe we can take 5 minutes tomorrow at the end of the session to actually, yeah? To do that? Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed that. Please make notes if you have something about this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madhuri, for this very, very interactive session, and I think we would want to continue with this after the inaugural ceremony. Right now, we would be beginning with our inaugural ceremony. We have the chief guest, Dr. Pragya Sharma, Director, Andaman Nicobar Institute of Medical Sciences with us. We're honored to have you, ma'am, with us. We also have Director ICMR Port Blair with us, and very shortly we'll be joined by Deputy Director Ayush Port Blair. And we'll just make arrangements in the next 5 minutes, and then we'll start with the ceremony. Thank you so much. Tables with one. We are also joined by our viewers online. We are streaming live on YouTube and our Facebook channels, ma'am. And we are joined by online viewers, and this is a CME that we are doing on mental health. And it's an honor to have these eminent personalities with us. So we all understand that mental health today is a very crucial aspect of overall well-being, and the global incidence of mental health illnesses is actually increasing, and it's on the rise. Mental health encompasses emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It's important to prioritize mental health, seek help when needed, and engage in self-care practices to maintain a healthy mind. So with this aim of educating our healthcare givers about mental health, we have planned this CME. Homeopathy, as it is in its counseling session, includes a lot of psychology, understanding the psychology of the patient and giving them counseling on various aspects. And with that, it's very important that the homeopaths understand about mental health and how to approach a patient for his or her psychological needs. And that's what we aim to build the skill on, offer homeopathy practitioners and researchers with this CME. So the CME is aptly titled as Holistic Mindscape, Linking Mental Health and Homeopathic Care. Since morning, ma'am, we have been having our sessions on holistic mindscape, understanding and managing anxiety and stress, pediatric neurodevelopment disorders, synapse to society, mindfulness and well-being for physicians and the impact on clinical outcomes. We have been joined by clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, and homeopaths with a special certification in psychology needs. We are honored to have with us Dr. P. Vijayachari. She is Director, Dr. P. Vijayachari, he is Director ICMR, Port Blair. And also we'll be joined by Dr. Kalyan Kadbhane. He is Deputy Director Ayush, Directorate of Health Services, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Besides, of course, the Chief Guest of our day, Dr. Pragya Sharma, Director NMS. We're waiting for our dignitary Dr. Kalyan Kadbhane to join us, and then we will be beginning with our inaugural ceremony. Well, we're already joined by Dr. Pragya Sharma and Dr. P. Vijayachari. He's there? Okay. May I call upon Dr. Subhash Kaushik, Director General, Central Council for Research in Homeopathy, to kindly accompany Dr. Pragya Sharma, Director, Andaman Nicobar Institute of Medical Sciences, our Chief Guest of the day, to the stage, please. And also I request Dr. P. Vijayachari, Director, ICMR Port Blair, to please join them on the stage. Thank you so much. I also request Dr. Shanti Adhikari to please grace the stage along with the dignitaries. Dr. Shanti Adhikari is Officer in Charge, Clinical Research Unit, Port Blair. Clinical Research Unit is a homeopathy research organization under Central Council for Research in Homeopathy, Ministry of Ayush, Government of India. And this unit is hosting continued medical education on holistic mindscape, linking mental health and homeopathy care. Ma'am has been kind enough, Pragya ma'am has been kind enough to be available with us despite her hectic schedule at a very short notice. And CRUH has been in talks with NMS for various projects, and we plan to do some collaborative studies in future. Okay. We also welcome Dr. Kalyan Kadbhane, Deputy Director, Ayush, Directorate of Health Services, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, to kindly join us on the stage, please. May I now request Director General, Dr. Subhash Kaushik, to please welcome our Chief Guest of the day, Dr. Pragya Sharma, Director, Andaman and Nicobar Institute of Medical Sciences, and felicitate ma'am with a bouquet, a shawl, and a memento. ऐसे हाथ में दे दे. टिक करो, टिक करो. Thank you so much, Kaushik sir. I now request Dr. Renu Mittal to kindly come over the stage to felicitate Dr. P. Vijayachari, Director, ICMR Port Blair. Dr. P. Vijayachari, go. Dr. Renu Mittal is Scientist 4, CCRH. And we thank Dr. P. Vijay Cherry to be with us today. He's Director ICNR Port Blair. And we are hopeful, sir, that we are going to use this occasion also to interact with you for various clinical researches that CCRH is doing. Thank you, sir. May I request Dr. Bhuvneshwari to please come up the stage and felicitate Dr. Kalyan Kadbhane, Deputy Director, Ayush Directorate of Health Services. We thank you, sir, for your presence with us today. We also have two very eminent personalities from Anthropological Survey of India, Dr. Ningomba Samoyjit Singh. We appreciate your presence with us today, and Dr. Sumitra Chakravarti. Thank you so much for joining us at CME today. That's a small token of appreciation for being with us. Thank you so much. Now I request Dr. Adhikari, Officer in Charge CRU Port Blair, to please felicitate our Director General, Dr. Subhash Kaushik. He's our Director General, Central Council for Research in Homeopathy. Dr. Adhikari, please. Thank you so much, sir. I now request Dr. Adhikari to welcome all the delegates and dignitaries to the board. Thank you.
Once again, a heartfelt welcome to this CME. We are fortunate to have with such diverse and esteemed group of nice people from Port Blair and outside Port Blair. We are truly honored to have you these people us today. Thank you for being here, and let's make the events a resounding success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adhikari. I request Director General, Central Council for Research in Homeopathy, Dr. Subhash Kaushik, to please be on the stage for his opening remarks. Thank you.
What is the time? A very good afternoon to each and everyone. Respected dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, my friends and colleagues. I would like to extend my heartfelt welcome to the chief guest, Dr. Pragya Sharma ji, Director, Andaman Nicobar Island Institute of Medical Sciences. Our valued resource persons from Mitra for Life, including Dr. Madhuri Vaishwegar, Mrs. Usha Madan, Dr. Babita Jayapal, Dr. J.C. Joseph, and dear organizers and delegates. Today, as we aim to be part of this enlightening and informative CME program, Holistic Mindscape, Bridging the Gap Between Mental Health and Homeopathic Care, I am deeply honored to stand before you to reflect upon the invaluable knowledge we hope to gain spring this CME and the significant strides we can make it in the realm of the mental health and holistic care through proper training. Over the 2-day course of this CME program, we will delve into a myriad of critical topics that are instrumental in shaping the future of healthcare. We will explore the profound impact of anxiety and stress on our patients' lives and the role of mindfulness in enhancing the well-being of both physicians and patients. We will examine the dynamic interplay between mental health and clinical outcomes, recognizing the interconnectedness of mind and body in the healing process. In a world that is increasingly defined by the digital era, we will also scrutinize the profound effects of technology on our health and well-being. We will explore the complexities of obsessive-compulsive disorder and the psychology of addiction, recognizing the urgent need for holistic approaches that address the root causes of these conditions. In the course of our COVID research projects at AIMS in Jhajjar, Haryana, my team, alongside Dr. Harleen Kaur's team, personally witnessed the profound impact of stress and anxieties on patients' morbidities. The experience of being separated from their families, especially due to a disease with unknown treatment, took many of shock and fear. Those healthy began to make a conscious effort to prioritize and maintain their mental and physical health, acknowledging that undeniable correction between the two. Homeopathy, with its deep-rooted principles of individualization, treating the person as a whole, and stimulating the body's innate healing abilities, offers a unique perspective in the realm of mental health care. It is strived to restore balance, harmony, and vitality in a way that resonates with the very essence of holistic medicine. Discussions today will also encompass the vulnerable adolescents population, emphasizing the importance of nurturing their mental health. You will all be agree that depression knows no age boundaries and demands our attention at all stages of life. Most importantly, we will discuss about the crucial realm of suicide prevention, acknowledging that each of us plays a vital role in extending a helping hand to those in need. The Holistic Mindscape CME is not just a gathering of medical professionals. It is a convergence of minds, a collaborative effort to explore and expand our understanding of how homeopathic care can complement and enhance mental care treatment. It is a forum for sharing knowledge, experiences, and insights that will undoubtedly contribute to the well-being of countless individuals. Once again, I welcome you all to the CME, and may we all continue to thrive in our mission to provide holistic care to those who need it most. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those encouraging words, sir. I now request Dr. P. Vijayachari, Director, ICMR Port Blair, to kindly share a few words with us.
Okay, fine. I think I have to say it may be good morning, maybe before noon. It is a really great pleasure for me to participate in this program and see you all the people here, this program. So you see that I would like to say only the two words, a few minutes. So that means the concept of the Indian medicine is indispensable. If you go for the history, you can see, particularly for example, we can call as the Charaka and Sushruta, who are the people, Indian doctors or Indian surgeons, they made the contributions are indispensable. Why I am telling to the Indian medicine is great. For example, if you take that homeopathy also, homeopathy principles are entirely different. Allopathy principles are different. Ayurveda different. Siddha different. All the things are different. But you can see that nowadays, recently they told that physiotherapy, all the things, is well defined several centuries ago by our Indian people. I am grateful to them. For example, if you see the yoga, all the principles of the yoga similar to the physiotherapy. That physiotherapy they told is a modern medicine, but not at all. So that same way, suppose if you take that some drugs for the homeopathy, the concept is same to treat the patient, but what the mechanism of the action is entirely different. For example, so allopathic medicine only, for example, antibacterial, it will kill the bacteria. So that concept of the homeopathy entirely different. It will not kill the bacteria, but will treat that patient. This is a concept. Suppose if you give that allopathy drugs, if you test it in the laboratory by using that one homeopathy, for example, if we add any high concentration also, it will not kill any bacteria, but it will treat the bacteria effectively. The concept is because the immune system modulation. You know, for example, in allopathy also, one drug is called a diethyl carbamazine, used for the filariasis. It is also, it will not kill the bacteria or parasite directly, but immune system it will stimulate. Immune system will kill the bacteria or parasite. The concept what we evidenced by that, no, I think maybe about 10 or 15 years back, I don't know, your Director General, that means had been there in ICMR, he told me that we have to check that antibacterial activity of the homeopathic medicine. He gave about 6, I remember, about more than 12 or 15 years back. I told before that, sir, I would like to know, he's a busy senior person, so I would like to know what is the concept, because allopathy concept, you know, you suppose if you add the higher concentration, it will kill the bacteria. So what is your concept? He told the lesser concentration will treat the patient. So difference is entirely different. Then I told, sir, that don't feel mind. Suppose if you not work, like not kill that bacteria by laboratory, by using the homeopathic medicines, but you don't feel because your mechanism is entirely different. I told clearly, it is immune mediated, homeopathy always, so a lot of other aspects also. That we check, I think, more than, 20 bacteria by using about 6 or 7 drugs of the homeopathy. None of that one not able to kill the microbe. That's the concept, but it's treating the patient, what I told wonderfully, it is dialcobzamazine, it will not kill the bacteria at all, sorry, parasite at all, but it will treat effectively by modulating the immune system. That's why this is very great, and we are proud about the Indian medicine, and I always, Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, Yoga, whatever it may be, is all not at all lower than the modern medicine. But of course, in the surgery, needed means you have to do the surgery, no doubt. But you saw Sushrata is the first man in India, he did the surgery by using that one, no, he chooses what the way you did for the ant to choose that, no, any surgery wound. This is a concept. It is wonderful, they developed at the time. These viewers, thank you very much for hearing. Sorry for that one, any wrong things I told, but good thing means, thank you very much. See you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's wonderful to hear these words from you coming from a scientist, a senior scientist, and appreciating the Indian systems of medicine and homeopathy and the way they work. It's really heartening to see that the scientists, the most conventional scientists, are also opening up to how scientific the other systems are and how the working of these systems are different from the conventional system. So thank you so much for those encouraging words, sir. And with this, we proceed for the felicitations of our resource persons before we hear from our chief guest, ma'am. So I request Dr. Madhuri Vedeswar to please proceed for her felicitation by the chief guest, and please do the formalities. So if you can honor our chief guest, our resource person, Dr. Madhuri Vedeswar, with a memento and a shawl. I request our DJ sir to kindly, sir, if you can step down the stage to help us have better photographs. If all the dignitaries can join as well, please. So Dr. Pragya Sharma, honoring our resource person, Dr. Madhuri Vedeswar, much deserved, a well-deserved felicitation indeed. Okay, sure. So Dr. Vedeswari, if you could also join the stage, join the dignitaries down the stage. Thank you so much. Sure. Sure. Also the shawl, if ma'am can present it to Dr. Madhuri. Just give the shawl, just the shawl. Thank you so much. I request Dr. Jessie Joseph to kindly be on the stage for felicitations. Requesting Dr. Pragya to please felicitate our next resource person, Dr. Jessie Joseph, with a memento and a shawl. Dr. Jessie Joseph is a consultant psychiatrist who is an MD in psychiatry from St. John's Medical College and is now a consultant at St. Isabel's Hospital, Mylapore for the past 8 years. Thank you so much. Requesting Mrs. Usha Madan to please proceed for her felicitation. She's a psychotherapist and emotional well-being coach. She gave us a very, very interesting session this morning and on mindfulness. So I think we all are a little more mindful about ourselves and about what we do with her session, and I request Dr. Pragya to honor her with a memento and a shawl, please. Thank you so much. Requesting Dr. Babita Jaipal, Consultant Homeopath, Head of Rural Projects at Metro for Life. To proceed for her felicitation by Dr. Pragya Sharma, Director, ANIMS, Port Blair. Dr. Babita Jaipal is the Head of Rural Projects, and also she's certified in Psychiatry and Mental Health from University of Sydney. I now request our Chief Guest to felicitate Dr. Shanti Adhikari, who is Officer in Charge, Clinical Research Unit, Port Blair, and also was the speaker of the first session. Dr. Shanti Adhikari is the man behind the CME. He's the one who is, because of him we are seeing today this event. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think we can proceed back to the stage. Thank you. Sir? नहीं है ना सर, नहीं किनका? अच्छा उन दोनों को फेलिसिटेट तो कर दिया ना, नहीं बोलेंगे. May I now request Dr. Pragya Sharma for her inaugural address, please?
Would you be able to create the presentation?
Okay, along with this, sure, we can do that. Ma'am, you can give a small opening remarks
Yeah,
and by
yeah,
then we'll
yeah. So, would that be available here on this platform, or
So ma'am, we can actually maybe a minute of address, and then we can move the tables and sit in the audience, and then we can have a presentation.
let the table? Okay, but that
Because the projection is going to be in the table. Yeah?
fine. So, a very good morning, esteemed guests, organizers, and all the delegates that are present here for the function, for the inaugural ceremony of the CME. I'm proud and privileged to be a part of this gathering today, and I wish I could be available with you across the journey of 2 days, when you'll be really doing a wonderful job, developing some important guidelines, developing some important methods of holistic care. So, I'm sorry for this technical glitch that happened because of the power cuts. I'm here amongst you not as a guest. I'm definitely integrally a part of this CME. Though the inaugural addresses do not involve any presentations by the speakers, but I specifically requested the organizers to give me a slot where I could speak something on mental health. This is an extremely close topic to my heart because we are seeing a pandemic of mental health issues rising across the globe in a manner which is probably going to be very soon uncontrollable. And managing this pandemic through just one system of treatment, allopathy, would not be possible because of the huge burden of patients we have, besides the other cultural and other factors that are responsible for the treatment seeking. So if the organizers permit, I'll just like to share a presentation. I'll not say it's a brief presentation, something more than a brief presentation I'd like to share with you. And if you don't mind, wherever you get bored, you can say, ma'am, thank you, and we don't want to listen anymore. So I would...
So we'll make the arrangements, yeah, thank you.
So I think if we can just make a quick concluding remark and then move on to the presentation, and then, yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for your inaugural address, and we'll take over ma'am's presentation, and we'll just do a quick conclusion and remove the tables, make quickly the appeal as a scientific seminar. So I think I request Dr. Nargis now to please give a concluding note.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day till now.
I start my concluding remarks, I want to invite Dr. Shanti sir to give over the special felicitation for our none other than Dr. Harleen ma'am. She is standing right with us. Please ma'am. A round of applause for Dr. Harleen Kaur ma'am, please, all of you. Please, please sir.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to bother you. Always a pleasure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I have to be on the right side.
Thank you. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to our chief guest, Dr. Pragya Sharma ma'am, Director NIMS, for gracing our event with her presence. Special thanks to our sir, Dr. Subhash Kaushik, Director General, CCRH New Delhi, for making this event possible. My thanks to all the dignitaries on the dais, Dr. Vijay, Director ICMR, Dr. Kalyan sir, Ayush, Deputy Director. I would like to extend my thanks to all the resource persons who are speaking to us and enlightening us with their knowledge. I would also like to extend my thanks to all the delegates present here and also to all the persons who are connected to us through online in the YouTube. Thank you all, and I hope you're all having a great day, and you have a great day also. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Requesting all the dignitaries to please join us off the stage in the audience. We have a table reserved for you, and we can quickly make the arrangements for the seminar, and we can hear from Pragya ma'am her presentation. And if I can request the organizing team to remove the tables immediately, please. So very quickly we can do all this. Can we have more members here? दो लोग तो चाहिए ना यहाँ पे सुमित वगैरह कहाँ है मैम का प्रेजेंटेशन ऑन कर दो प्रज्ञा मैम प्रज्ञा मैम ऑन कर दो प्रेजेंटेशन टेबल हटा देंगे टेबल यार आप ही हेल्प कर दो संजय he'll help you. Ma'am, presentation on display. Thank you so much. I would like to invite Dr. Pragya Sharma, Director NIMS, again on the stage, please, for her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me a motivational cheer to be on the stage again. I really have a lot of respect for the audience, since you have already listened to me, but you are welcoming me back on the stage again for some insight on the mental health issues. So I am amongst most of the homeopaths, doctors here, clinical psychologists. I come from a different stream. I am an MBBS and MD doctor and come from allopathy scheme. So we are a perfect example of integration when we talk here. So I chose this opportunity to speak to my brethren and decide on how to go ahead with handling the mental health issues in our country. So the first slide would be that I would like to talk on these issues. This is a very broad slide. I'll not take much of your time on these issues, because as and when we progress on the presentation, we'll realize that we'll be slowly pondering upon these topics. Next, please. Next, please. So what is mental health? A very, very basic question, issues we've been dealing with very often in the media, in the news, and even across our neighbors, our families, our schools, our colleges. Being a head of a college, I find mental health issues so common in the youth and adolescents that come to the medical institutions these days. So what is mental health? I think broadly, if we say mental health is an adaptation of an individual with one own self and with others in the area, community, family, wherever we are. So this is more of a relationship, a behavioral, emotional, psychological, social well-being, and relationship of an individual with self and with the others in the vicinity. So this encompasses their ability to manage stress, relate to others, make choices, and adapt to life's challenges and changes. Even WHO says that it's a critical component of health, and WHO, as per the recent the definition that WHO has given for health, is that health is not only physical health or infirmity or any disease related to physical health, but mental, emotional, psychological, social, are the other domains of health that are necessary to label an individual as a completely healthy individual. Why we say that mental health is as important? Because it affects not only an individual on the whole, like the thoughts, feelings, behaviors, but also the relationship. And relationship is a very, very broad term. When we say it's not a relationship with an individual, it's a relationship with the family, relationship with the peer group, relationship with the society on the whole. So I think I would like to say here is that brain is the strongest organ in the body. And it is an organ because it can also go wrong. The message has to be to the local people, to the community, that brain is an organ that can go wrong. And it needs to be treated. That is the important thing. And it is very well treatable. Next, please. So we all know the spectrum of mental illnesses. As physicians, we find right from stress up to the psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and we all know about that. Next, please. So the global scenario with the increasing technology is a boon, but is also leading to a lot of problems amongst us. So conflicts, war situations across the globe is increasing the mental health disorders worldwide with an increasing burden of stress, anxiety, and depression, very commonly seen, which was never heard of in the previous times. As on date, we have a data that says that 13% rise of mental health disease conditions is seen and substance use disorder over last 1 decade only. So we can imagine if you translate this into numbers, it's a huge, huge burden globally. Alarming is that 1 in every 5 people living are suffering from one or the other mental disability. So imagine we are, I think, 50 people here. So out of us also, almost 10 people have some or the other mental health issue, which either we don't know of or which we don't recognize as a mental health condition that needs to be treated. And the further something which is bothering is that global government expenditure on mental health is less than 2%. Again, coming back, we are here integrated because conventional treatments have their own limitations. Next, please. National data, we do not have sufficient data, but whatever data I could fetch on, as per the Public Health Foundation of India, 2017, 14.3% of total population suffers from mental health issue as compared to data by NMHS 1, which was 10.6%. So we can see the escalation over just 1 year is remarkable. Depression and anxiety being most commonly reported mental disorders because of biological differences. The types of diseases are also different in the men and women have more commonly depression, anxiety, and eating disorders, whereas conduct disorders and autism spectrum are more commonly seen in men. Next, please. Extremely important slide for the day, the local context of Andamans. We are leaders in suicide rates as compared to national average. Andaman has highest suicide rates, 45 per lakh population, as against the national average of 11.3 per lakh population. So it's huge, almost 3 times than what is the national average. Reasons, I've tried to find out some reasons, though we do not have any research data to comment upon the reasons. Higher stigma and embarrassment, since this is a small community, small locality, very small place. And maybe the reporting is higher because again the communication through grapevine is very fast and we come to know about the deaths. Substance use disorder is also a very, very common mental disorder as per DSM-4 criteria. And here also we have seen as per NFHS 5 data that more than half of the men and more than 1/3 of the women, they are consuming tobacco, and almost 40% of men and 5% women consume alcohol. And we can imagine this is the most productive population age-wise which is indulging in substance use disorders. Of course, we have a lot of information on recreational drug use amongst college and school-going students, though we do not have any concrete data coming up from the researchers as of now, though we are going ahead with ANAX to conduct a few researches in the students in Andamans to find out some data on recreational drug use also. Next, please. So now, there has been a lot of research that says that stress, anxiety, depression, they have a bearing on the physical health of individuals. We know that India is going to be a diabetic capital by 2030. What are the factors responsible for diabetes? Stress, very significant factor, besides other factors, nutritional factors, genetic factors. So we know that stress is always a factor behind even the non-communicable diseases that we are going to be the leaders very soon. 2030 is not very far off, just 7 years. And after 7 years, we'll be leading in diabetes just because of the stress, which is a very important contributor and which is easily preventable and manageable. So we need to have a holistic approach in health to consider an individual as a whole, recognizing interconnectedness of physical, mental, emotional, and social aspects of health, and not only the physical health issues. So we look at the 8 pillars of holistic approach in health. Next, please. So we have to treat an individual as a whole. So treating an individual as a whole means once we are finding a physical ailment, let's say a patient comes to us with diabetes or any other physical ailment, you have to also look into the mental health aspect of that individual. How is he relating himself to the other members of the society? How is he relating himself to the other members of the family? How well is he adjusted into his own circumstances and ecosystem will also impact the physical health of that individual. Personalized patient-centric care, I think I would not like to talk much about it because we are all physicians, we all know how to handle that. Emphasis on prevention and wellness. So when I say that we'll be the diabetic capital, on the other side, as a providers, we need to understand that it is a burden on the resources of the country. To treat the patients is a major financial resource burden on the country, so we need to be more into prevention and wellness. So I heard that we have a wellness coach, somebody in the morning was with us, who is here to teach us wellness. So wellness is an extremely, extremely important part for the country to prevent the resource burden on the country for treating the patients once the disease occurs. Integration of modalities, we are here giving a perfect example. Holistic assessment, we all do that, and I think homeopathy is the one branch that does the holistic assessment of a patient much better than any other branch does. I think I've been to a homeopathist myself once, and the way they get into your life, understanding every aspect of your life that has impact on your health is tremendous and wonderful. I would like to give 3 cheers for that. So this homeopathy is doing a wonderful job in that. We have to be culturally sensitive. Understanding the culture is very important to implement health services. Collaboration and teamwork, which we are here for, and mind, body, and spirit connection, where the government is also taking steps for integration of yoga and other meditation techniques to bring people to be more healthy and more mentally sound so that we are able to prevent on many health conditions. Next, please. So the unfortunate situation is the unmet need is extremely, extremely high for mental health. We have only 10% of people who require treatment are taking treatment. So only 10%, 90% of the people are not able to take the treatment because 20% have only access, and out of them also who have access, only 10% are going to the facilities to. So where do they go? Next, please. Okay, so we will first see the reasons of poor treatment seeking, because as I said, lack of knowledge about mental health issues, because people don't identify the symptoms that are not overtly expressed. Sometimes till the symptoms are yelling and shouting and telling you that now you must go for care and treatment, people don't even come to know that they need some kind of a treatment. Lack of access to practical treatment options, maybe some distance, some lack of care providers, cost and associated opportunity cost associated with care, that is burden of the treatment, and fear of losing the job because of stigma. So where do they go at last? They go to quacks, traditional healers, faith healers, magic healers, and come back all the more sicker and depressed, because they are not able to access the right kind of healthcare services for them. Stigma is an extremely, extremely important factor when we talk about mental health conditions, because mental health issue is always perceived as a flaw in one's character. It's not that people don't believe that, like, your heart can go wrong, your muscle can go wrong, your legs can go wrong, your knees can go wrong, your joints can go wrong, your brain can also go wrong, and it can be treated, it needs to be treated. No. So that's a problem. Besides the attribution of mental illnesses to various reasons is that it's a God's curse, it's somebody has done a witchcraft, some negative energies on me, with a lot of superstitions associated with mental health disorders. Lack of awareness, not only about the symptoms, about the disorders, but awareness about the availability of facilities. Strong stigma and discrimination by the individual, family, and community also. So family is also discriminated against that has a patient suffering from any mental disorder. And even some people are disowned by their parents and families after being diagnosed with a mental health illness or an issue related to mental health. So there's an extreme need to alleviate stigma, and for alleviation of stigma, some actions are being taken, some actions need to be taken at our level while we are dealing with the patients and with the families. Some activities like IC activities to across various sectors to create more awareness on the mental health disorders, impart a lot of health education to the patients, their relatives, their communities, organize one-to-one interaction sessions, encourage celebrities, the local leaders, the priests of the local area to come and interact with people and tell them that this is something which is treatable. Come out and get it treated. And celebration of health days, like we are already doing World Suicide Prevention Day and World Mental Health Day. We've recently celebrated World Mental Health Day in our institution also, and I'm sure this CME is also being organized in continuation to the celebration of World Mental Health Day only. So these are very important things that need to be done to make mental health issues or disorders an acceptable issue amongst the entire population. So what do we need to do? We need to integrate the treatment modalities, because modern medicine has its own limitations, own challenges, since either there are some drugs not available, or if the drugs are available, they have their side effects, or there's a more stigma attached if you go to a clinic that has a label of a psychiatrist. So we need to have some integrative method where the patient goes to a place So if the patient is going to a place where it is a general physician or a general doctor or a general duty medical officer, where he is not labeled as a pagal, I'm sorry, but labeled as a pagal if a person is only going for depression or anxiety. These are common problems which happen to each one of us. Any one individual in this room who can raise hand and say, I have never had stress and never had anxiety. It's not possible. We are all humans. We can have it at any point in time in life. So something which is not labeled as a psychiatrist, a general homeopathic medicine, a Ayush medicine, a Ayush counter or a homeopathic counter or something which doesn't label an individual as a psychiatric patient. comparatively they are not safer with lesser side effects, and again the stigma like what the patient is using for a skin disorder. So the feel and look of the drug, appearance of the drug, the medicine, the way you dispense your medicine is almost similar. So if I am consuming my medicine amongst a crowd of 20 people, people won't come to know that what I am consuming. So what matters is the comfort of the patient to consume those drugs even amidst a lot of population, a lot of people. So integration of homeopathy is extremely important, and we need to incorporate homeopathic care as a part of integrative care. Next please. So how it works, you already know better than me. There is no risk of harmful effects, highly diluted, extremely safe, and I just said initially, and we cheered for each other, that you are taking a very detailed history of the patients who come for homeopathic management, and it is suitable for all ages. Next please. Next please. So why homeopathy? Again the same point. Next please. So this is one case scenario I would like to share with you about the integrative approach. This is a 36-year-old man who first experienced depression 5 years before his integrative medicine consultation. He had been on treatment with some antidepressants for more than 4 years. He reported intermittent unemployment, and he had started and lost 4 jobs because he could not concentrate and exhibited an indifference and aversion to his work. His score for depression was, on some scale, was 49, and he was being given some cocktail of allopathic drugs. You can see 6 drugs mentioned here. To this patient was being given, and based on the holistic approach, another drug was added. So the clinical history, the patient is a depression patient for 5 years because of a new position and bad relationship with his boss, treated with antidepressants, allopathy, cocktail of drugs over 4 years, in and out of work multiple times, addicted to drinking, felt mortified and pride was wounded, concentration difficulty, and indifference and aversion to work. Next please. So when a physician takes a history, a psychiatrist takes a history, he would just talk about depression, kab se hai, kyun hai, kya hai, that's all, and give all kinds of antidepressant treatment. When a homeopathist will take a history, I think you will agree to what I'm saying here. You will talk about what food you eat, how many times do you eat, what time do you sleep, what time do you get up. So the detailed integral history of that individual, once you take for the homeopathic management, gives you a complete picture of the individual on general, local, and the mental health of that particular patient. Next please. So there's a three-step path to recovery. A patient has a depressive state. We give antidepressants to reduce difficulties in everyday life. So this would be an immediate measure, and for a continued support and final remedy, not only symptomatic relief, we can integrate homeopathic care along with the allopathic care. Next please. So the progress was to reduce the difficulty in daily life for initial 1 to 4 months. After 1 month follow-up of starting the homeopathic treatment, the patient started feeling less tired and was sleeping well. After 4 months, he was feeling better and had decreased emotional experience of emptiness, and the depression level before starting the therapy was 7 out of 10, which later on reduced to, next please, 3 out of 10 after 6 months of continuous follow-up and treatment by the homeopathy. This is a true case study. I'm not framed it up. So this is a study which you can also use in your CME to say that these kind of studies are indicative that integrative approaches have a better response in patients who have mental health disorders. And after 10 months, he was preparing to restart work within a month, and after 1 year follow-up, he had stopped all conventional medicines and resumed working. So just 1 year, the patient was back to work. This is commendable. Next, please. So after 1 year, to reduce or taper off the medicines with the integrative medicine, the patient's mental health status was good, and he no longer needed any homeopathic support. Also, he reported feeling fulfilled in his life and experienced no recurring of depression after 6 months, which he subsequently ended his treatment because of complete recovery. So 1.5 years, the patient was completely recovered, reinstated, rehabilitated back into his family, his work, and everywhere. So this is a classical example of integrative approach to manage such patients. Next, please. We already know that Government of India is doing a lot in this direction and in this field. We already know about the 2017 Mental Health Act. Access to health care, mental health care is a human right, is a fundamental right. And also starting with the Telemanas Health Facility, which we already have started in ANAMS, and we have a Telemanas center in our institute, and everybody in the islands is free to call. It's a toll-free number. You can call 24/7, and we have a psychologist attached where we also give some psychological support and drugs management. So we can handle with the homeopathy department in case somebody requires a treatment and wants to opt for an alternative system of medicine. So the way forward is to build collaborative models like we are trying to do here. Training of mental health professionals for integrative approach. We are training the students in allopathy. We can also have few sessions, interactive sessions by the homeopathy doctors where they can come and talk about their own regimes that they have for the mental health care patients and patients who are under depression. Inclusion of treatment options, that is already a part of Ayush through PHCs and health and wellness centers, but that can also be a part in the medical colleges. We can propose to have an Ayush dispensary or a Ayush OPD chamber within our OPD, within the GB Pant hospital, if you would like to do that. And intensify research to support evidence-based practice. We need to have a lot of research data because we are grossly falling short of research data in mental health and suicide prevention specifically. So this is something which is a need of the hour, and I'll recommend and I'll advise and I'll request you all to go ahead as researchers to find a lot of information and data so that we have an evidence-based planning and policy making. So I would just end this by saying what mental health needs is more of sunlight, more of candor, and more of unashamed conversations amongst ourselves and with our patients. Thank you very much, and have a great 2-day deliberations, and please come out with something very concrete and positive for the community. Thank you very much.
This is yours. Words fall short to thank you, ma'am, for these encouraging words. And it's really wonderful and encouraging and motivating to see how mainstream medicine practitioners and director, people who are at the position of director and senior positions like ICM director, Port Blair. It's really, really very heartening and very motivating to see that you know how the integration approach is being adopted in many sectors of health today, and how they're all open to joint researchers to see how we can best benefit our patients. And of course, homeopathy has a lot of scope in conditions of mental health, and but it coming from you is something that we really appreciate, and we get even more inspired to work in this field in an integrated manner. So we'll definitely be taking our talks further offline, of course, with Dr. Shanti Adhikari taking the lead in getting more collaborations in this respect, and we'll be contacting you further for this. And thank you so much for your time and your very, very valuable, informative talk today. And may I now request our next speaker. So we have a little change in the speakers lined up. So we would have Dr. Jessie Joseph's session first on obsessive compulsive disorder. So, and then Dr. Madhuri will be taking over. So may I now request Dr. Jessie Joseph, who is a psychiatrist, to please take over for her talk on obsessive compulsive disorder. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and thank you, ma'am, for the talk, and you've laid the foundation for me. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm here to give you an overview on OCD, and it's going to be an extensive session. So let me have the slides here. If at any point you'll have any doubts, you can interrupt me as we go along here. So this is a picture of a physician and a psychiatrist. He is Jean-Dominique Esquirol. He was a French physician and a psychiatrist. He was the first person who coined the term obsessive compulsive disorder in the year 1938. So he worked extensively in the French asylums, and he came up with this term. And I've had patients tell me, how can someone who's so preoccupied with orderliness be classified as having a disorder? And I understood what they were trying to get at. And we also have a lot of people who think that it isn't a disorder, and they take pride in when they have obsessive compulsive personality, they think it's a good thing, and many people talk of it in that way, and they find it difficult to see that it could be a disorder and it could be debilitating. The next slide, please. So why are we talking about obsessive compulsive disorder? It is the fourth most common psychiatric disorder after we have phobia, substance use disorder, and major depressive disorder. There is increasing awareness now with more of education and awareness. And in the general population, we find that 2 to 3% of the general population would at some point in their life had a diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder. And the prevalence among children is almost similar. So the usual onset for OCD is usually around puberty, but we can have ranges from 2 years to 35 years. The peak age of onset is usually around 20 years of age, and we find that among the children, it is a little earlier for the boys to develop OCD. So the rates of OCD between men and women are almost equal. It's about 50%. Some of the studies we find women have a higher rate of prevalence. But in the younger age group, like we said, the boys seem to have it at an earlier onset, and so they may have a higher prevalence. It's more common among the divorced and those who are separated than among those who are married or those who are single. And with the DSM-5, we found a major shift in how it was classified. Previously, OCD used to be classified under the spectrum of anxiety disorders. With increasing research and increasing studies that have come up, they have found that it has an entity of its own because of all the genetic studies and the heritability factors and the unique symptom clusters, response to medication. So they have given it a separate category, and it's been diagnosed, classified under obsessive compulsive and related disorders. And previously, insight, that is the awareness that the patients have that their thoughts are irrational. So it was understood that they always had good insight, but nowadays we know that there are patients who do not have that good insight, and they seem to think that it's rational. There is nothing exaggerated about how they're behaving. And even to the spectrum where it could be delusional, where they believe that what they're doing is perfectly normal, and it's only the family who's overreacting to how they behave. And they refuse to come to see the doctors. It can affect treatment compliance. It can affect even their willingness to come and have a consultation. So they have included this in the new DSM-5, that insight can vary. It can be good, it can be poor, it could also be delusional. So that is important for us to know when we elicit the history. And there is another specifier that they have added, which is if it is associated with a tic disorder. Now the reason they have added that is because we find some patients who have Tourette's syndrome or other tic disorders, and their prognosis as well as their management is very different from those who do not have associated tic disorders. So that's another specifier that they have added. So what is obsessive compulsive disorder? The DSM-5 gives us the criteria. The presence of both obsessions and compulsions. The obsessions are defined as recurrent, persistent. It could be not just thoughts, but also urges or images in their mind that are experienced at some point during their disturbance as being intrusive, unwanted, and that is, in most individuals, it can cause marked anxiety or distress. What we need to remember is they have said it could be there in most of the patients or at some point in their time. So it's not consistent all through. There may be times, like we said, where insight can also vary. At some points they may feel that they're fine and they really don't see anything as being abnormal. So sometimes we need to look at it at a continuum. Maybe earlier it was more intense, now it is less, but that shouldn't affect the way we diagnose the condition. the individual attempts to ignore or suppress such thoughts, urges, or images, or to neutralize them with some thought or action by performing something that we call as a compulsion. Compulsions have been defined by DSM as repetitive behaviors, which could be like hand washing, checking behaviors, or they could also be mental acts. So the behaviors are easier to observe. People can look at it, the family recognizes it, but many a time people are doing mental acts as compulsions where they may need to count, or they may need to pray, or they say a few words silently, and the person feels that they need to do it a certain number of times. They are not able to focus on the next thing, and they are struggling with something, and they just are, it affects their functionality. Now others may not be aware of this, and even the physician needs to ask for it specifically to elicit this. The behaviors or the mental acts are aimed at preventing or reducing the distress or preventing some dreaded event or situation. For example, someone may feel that if I don't chant this a certain number of times, something terrible is going to happen to my family member. So they do it a certain number of times. Then that could increase further. If it was 5 times and they feel they need to do it another 10 times. And there's no limit to how it can get worse. So they think that these things are going to prevent the particular disastrous effect that they fear. And many a time these behaviors may not be rational. It may not rationally explain how chanting something is going to prevent a disastrous effect, or even if it could explain it rationally, it may be a huge exaggeration of what it is in reality. So those are some of the factors by which we define the compulsions. Next. When we look at it and you want to quantify, like how significant is this, really how much of it is really a disorder, or is it just, their importance on orderliness. So the DSM as well as the ICD, International Classification of Diseases, they have suggested that if it takes more than 1 hour in a day, then you would think it is significant. If they're taking more than 1 hour in going through their obsessions and doing all their compulsions before, they can finish their task or end their day, that is significant. And if it does cause significant distress or impairment in socio-occupational or other important areas of functioning. If it affects task completion, if they're not able to get to their place of work, if they're not able to complete an assigned task, then we could say that there is significant distress. And this disturbance is not better accounted for by some other mental disorder. Like it's not a specific phobia alone that is there, then it would be diagnosed as a specific phobia, or it's not part of some other spectrum like a body dysmorphic disorder or delusional disorder. So we need to make sure that we have ruled out other things and diagnosed it. This is what I've already mentioned about insight and the specifier of tics. Next. Like I said, insight could vary between time durations. Previous year the insight may have been lesser, this year it may be better. It can also vary between an episode, and we have this assessment to see how their insight is. It's called the Brown Assessment of Belief Scale, which was developed in 1998. This will help us to rate actually how good their insight has been. It's a clinician administered interview, and it has dimensions where it looks into the conviction of the belief that they have, how they perceive others' views of their own beliefs, and the fixity of their thoughts, and the insight about the symptom itself. So there have been some studies which have shown that those with poorer insight have had poorer prognosis, but this has not been conclusively found in all studies. Yeah. So this is the ICD International Classification of Diseases, the text revision 11, that is very similar to the DSM-5. We don't have very many changes in that. Next. So when we talk about OCD, what is the most common obsession? The most common we have found is contamination, and among the compulsions, it is about checking. Okay. And the mental rituals, like I said, they are the third most common type of compulsions, and that can be missed out unless we specifically ask for it. Praying was the most frequently endorsed type of mental ritual, and patients who have had these primary mental rituals, they tend to spend a year longer in treatment, and their prognosis also tends to be poorer. So that is, and patients with OCPD, which is obsessive compulsive personality disorder, It was earlier believed that they are more prone to developing OCD, but they found that the occurrence of OCPD is the same across other psychiatric disorders as well, and it's not that it is increased in those with OCD. So this is a list of obsessions and compulsions in order of their frequency. The most frequent being contamination, followed by pathological doubt, somatic obsessions regarding health and body and need for symmetry, aggressive obsessions, sexual obsessions, and about 60% of the patients usually would have multiple obsessions. It wouldn't be just one or two. And compulsions, checking was the highest at 63%. Washing 50%, counting, need to ask or to confess, symmetry and precision 28%. Praying as a mental compulsion, yeah. Yeah, okay. So okay, I think this is from a different study and a different year, so there must be a slight overlap in that, yeah.
Because see, contamination, when we look, a compulsion comes from an obsession, because there is an obsession about contamination, so washing comes there.
Yeah.
So there's a doubt, and that is why checking comes.
See, now there can be patients who do have separately only obsessions or only compulsions. So among all the compulsions, they have found that this is the most common of the compulsions. Among all the obsessions, this is the most common compulsion.
Mostly the compulsions, they stem from the obsession.
In a given patient, if contamination is their main obsession, that would be washing would be their compulsion.
So
Yeah.
when we say that praying is a common mental ritual or a compulsion, then what is the obsession behind it? It could be fear, or it could be...
It could be that something terrible is going to happen unless I say this 3 times or unless I say that 4 times. So that could be the obsession that they have. Fear.
Does it become pathological? I mean, praying is something which is far more common than...
Yeah, yeah. Again, like I said, you're praying, but what is the way in which you're praying? See, normally if I'm praying, I'm reading something, I sing a few songs, that's fine. But if I'm saying that I need to say or chant this particular thing so many number of times, so that this thing, terrible thing does not happen to this person, and there's no logic or reason, like we said, no? It doesn't make logical sense. It's something like a magical thinking. If I do this n number of times, 8 times, it may be a random number. Even they can't tell you why it is 8. You understand the quality of...
If I look at it, I don't know, but in North India, Chalia is one of the most common praying rituals that we come across. Do it for 40 days. I don't know about other parts of the country, but Chalia is something very, very common, that if I do this Chalia, maybe this evil is going to be warded off, or if this something wrong is going to happen. And a lot of people are in a habit of getting into it. So at what point of time, and this could be a very strong ritual also, they go barefoot, and I do it for 40 days, I'm going to go barefoot, or I'm going to
Yeah.
So when is it that we should classify it as somebody who has an OCD as compared to somebody who's,
Yeah, so,
familial or traditional?
so we will look at the cultural context as well, right? So we'll have to see if there are other family members who believe the same in that community. Is that what is commonly believed, or is this a stray incident? So we will have to give it that sort of a judgment, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it may not be just that one symptom, no? In a given patient, usually they don't come with just one obsession. They would have other things. So we are looking at the whole at the patient, and we're seeing what are the other symptoms. And it may be just one, which will make it easy for you to make the diagnosis. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so this is a study done by Pinto et al. It's called the Brown Longitudinal Obsessive Compulsive Study, where they have classified all the obsessions and compulsions into 5 different categories, where they've said it could either be between symmetry and ordering, or hoarding, where they tend to collect things beyond what could be useful at a given point. Right now, in the DSM-5, they have removed hoarding and they've made it into a separate category, not under OCD, because they found that it has a separate set of genetic and pathophysiological underpinnings. So this was what was previously there, and doubts and checking, contamination and cleaning, or taboo thoughts where people would even not be willing to talk about it unless you specifically ask them. People feel very reluctant to tell you that they have thoughts of sexual content, or they have thoughts about aggressive content, or things where they have blasphemous thoughts. These are things that they're very reluctant to tell us unless we specifically ask for it. Yeah. Hoarding and taboo thoughts have been found to have very robust heritability and genetic loading. This is another way in which they have subtyped them of OCD, having an abnormal risk assessment, where the patients have extreme anxiety or fear of some terrible consequence as a result of whatever is their obsession, pathological doubting, and a sense of incompleteness in OCD, where people would be asked to do a task and it's almost done, but they will not be able to conclude it. Towards the end, they just keep on ruminating and wanting to do something more, until they feel that it's just right. And that may be very superfluous, but it affects their task completion, affects their efficacy. So, and this has been found to show a potentially critical link between personality disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and OCPD as well. And they have greater symptom severity and functional impairment in those with this set of incompleteness as an obsessive thought. So, Y-box is a rating scale that we use to measure the severity of the obsessive compulsive symptoms. So usually the patients would be given a checklist of which they would tick mark the most significant or important ones that are affecting them, and of those we would select about 10 of those in order of their hierarchy, and then the clinician would rate it based on 5 dimensions, looking at the amount of time that is spent on these obsessions or compulsions, interference with functioning or relationship, the degree of distress that it causes to the patients, the amount of resistance that they can offer, and control that they have over it. So it's a complete score of about 40, and below 8 it's not significant. If it's more than 32, it's severe. So that is something that we can do across time also to see improvement in their condition as we are treating them, or over a period of time to see how they're faring. And we've seen, like, mostly we find that patients do have a combination of obsessions and compulsions. Very rarely do they have exclusively just obsessions or just compulsions. Next. So now we're looking at what are all the different factors which contribute to OCD. So this is an integrative model. We have both the genetic factors, environmental factors. Environmental factors could be stress, trauma, neuroinflammatory conditions, perinatal events, and all of these are mediated through the neurotransmitters. There are mainly 3 which are related to OCD, which are glutamate, serotonin, and dopamine. They work on the areas of the brain which are on the cortex as well as the basal ganglia. That is the main circuit. There is a corticostriatum, the thalamus. Those circuits are affected, and we have the spectrum of OCD symptoms that result. Next. So I'm just going to briefly touch upon all of these. You can let me know if you have more doubts and we can go in detail here. So the genetic factors in OCD, they found that 27 to 47% of the patients have had some family history and heritability. In childhood onset cases, the genetic loading has been found in 45 to 65% of the patients. And the rate of OCD in relatives was 2 times higher than among those who did not have it in their relatives. And in children, relatives of children and adolescents, it was 10 times higher, the family history of OCD. So we find that there is a 4 times higher chance of someone developing OCD if there is a family history of OCD. So when they were studying the linkage, to study the genetic factors in OCD, there are 2 main types of genetic studies which are being done. One is the linkage studies and then the genome-wide association studies. So linkage studies would basically look at the patients with OCD and look at the specific chromosomal region to see where the abnormality is, and they would go and try to find the causality there. Whereas the genome-wide association studies would look at the entire genome among patients as well as controls and look for specific polymorphisms and see if the proportion of the polymorphisms are higher among cases as compared to controls, and they make the correlations, and then there will be further studies to look into causality subsequently. So with the genome-wide association studies, they've found one particular chromosome, the 9p24, to be specifically implicated, and subsequent studies they found chromosome 3q, 7p, 1q, 15q, and 6q to be implicated here. The glutamate transporter gene on the 9p24 specifically was something that was implicated in the genetic causation of OCD. Next. The other thing was on the serotonin levels, serotonin-related polymorphisms, and they have found the serotonin transporter-linked promoter region. There's a repeat of a particular degenerate sort of a repeat of a polymorphism, and it's redundant. This is seen on the gene on chromosome number 17, and this transporter of serotonin is very important in the pathophysiology of OCD, and this has been something which has been confirmed as one of the genetic findings. Serotonin 2A receptors are also important in the polymorphisms that have been found, not just in OCD but also in schizophrenia as well as in the management of depression. This has been implicated. Now it's important because we find a lot of comorbidity with schizophrenia as well as depression because of the common genetic abnormalities that are seen across the spectrums. So many a time we do find patients who may initially present with schizophrenia, subsequently we find that they have got OCD or they have depression, and later we find they also have OCD. So they can co-occur in patients, and even in family members we may find that someone has OCD and someone else in the family has schizophrenia. So male polymorphisms have been involved with the enzymes catechol-ethyl transferase and monoamine oxidase A. So very briefly, I'm going to tell you about the neurocircuits in OCD. So this is a sagittal section of the brain. The blue area is a prefrontal cortex, the green area is a striatum, and the yellow is a thalamus. So in OCD, what we find is that in normal patients, whenever there is a danger or a threat, from the cortex there are signals which are going to the striatum and then the thalamus, and the thalamus would send back signals to take appropriate action to the cortex of the brain. Soon after that, we also do have inhibitory signals which would then take appropriate action to neutralize that, and once the threat is sorted out, we are back to normal. Whereas in OCD, what we find is that the inhibitory controls are not working as expected, and they continue to have this hyperdrive where they're still continuing to send signals to neutralize the threat as they still perceive it to be extremely high. Yeah, this is putting it very simplistically, and this is a coronal section of the brain, and we're looking at the basal ganglia and the cortex regions which are involved in OCD. So here we can see we don't have a pointer. So the green color over here is a putamen and the globus pallidus. On top of that, on the yellow, we can see the caudate nucleus. The purple is the thalamus, below that is the subthalamic nucleus, and the substantia nigra. So these are going to be the areas of the brain which are related in OCD. There are also the regions of the brain involved with movement disorders, and we find a lot of correlations with them. And with the tic disorders, we find that also is implicated. Yeah, the next slide, please. So could you go back to the previous one? So the anatomical changes that they have found in the brains of patients with OCD have been that the gray matter in the caudate and the putamen, they are much increased in size, whereas overall on the periphery, as you can see in the parietal lobe, as well as in the prefrontal regions and temporal regions, there is a thinning of the gray matters of the brain. So this has been found commonly. Yeah, next one. And the next. The functional imaging studies have also been done to look at specific circuits in the brain which are highlighted when patients are examined to see which areas of the brain are triggered when they are exposed to their obsessions. So they have found that there is a hyperactivity in the corticostriatal thalamic cortical circuits, and they have looked at the orbitofrontal cortex, and they have found that there is more of a hyperactivity in the lateral lateral orbitofrontal region, which is for the obsessions, and the medial part of the orbitofrontal cortex is more to do with the compulsions. Now the reasons that they have studied all these different areas and minutely looked at the mappings of these things is because in the management, when we do have surgical procedures or when we look at ablating a certain tracts of the brain, they look at the neural symptoms, the symptoms that the patient has, and the particular areas of the brain which are affected, and then they can aim for specific therapies like transcranial magnetic, or if they have to do DBS, deep brain stimulation, they will direct it specifically to that region of the brain which is related to the specific compulsion or the obsession. So nowadays we have very extensive radio imaging studies with PET studies, positron emission tomography, we have digital tensor imaging. Now all of these regions will be highlighting different areas of the brain that can be mapped, and precision wise you can do the surgical procedures in patients who have intractable OCD not responding to medication or to therapy. Yeah. Next slide please. So this is an image of the PET scans that have been done, and on the normal side you can see the highlight is of a certain kind, whereas on the patient with obsessive compulsive disorder we can see a much greater activity in the prefrontal cortex and also in the temporal regions of the brain. Yeah. Next slide. So like I told you, there are anatomical correlates to the symptoms that we find in OCD, and they found that aggression symptoms are modulated mostly between these areas of the brain, we call the ventral striatum, amygdala, and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Sexual and religious symptoms have had an influence on the ventrostriatal and the insular connectivity of the brain. Yeah. So this is a summary of what I was trying to tell you, where we have this corticostriatal thalamic circuit of the brain. We have a direct and an indirect pathway. In patients with OCD, the direct pathway is more on an overdrive, and the indirect pathway, which inhibits this overreaction, is not functioning optimally. The next one, please. This is again a summary of the pathways, and we find the corticothalamic pathway is usually working on a hyperdrive, and we find that the corticostriatothalamic pathway is working suboptimally. The region of the brain, which is the cortex to the anterior cingulate cortex and the amygdala, that is the part of the brain which processes the emotions, and they become extremely anxious, they are unable to relax. The affective component of OCD is mediated by this particular tract. Next one, please. Yeah, that is what was explained in the previous slide. Next. And like I told you, the three main chemicals that have been related are serotonin, glutamate, as well as dopamine. So there has been extensive research supporting the evidence of serotonin in the pathophysiology of OCD, and they have found decreased levels of serotonin in the platelets, as well as one of the metabolites, 5-hydroxyindole acetic acid. Even that is found to be low in the CSF of patients with OCD. They found differences in the levels of melatonin in patients with OCD. They tend to have a slower amount, lesser amount of release of melatonin and a delayed phase. They also have a delayed phase of a sleep pattern and circadian rhythm in patients with OCD. And they tend to also have a variability in their cortisol levels, which is different from the normal circadian pattern. And it's possible then to correct these by giving them the challenges with these particular the dexamethasone suppression test. With all these things they have measured, they've analyzed, and they've seen it's possible also to, they are exploring possibilities to bring about treatments through this. Yeah, next. Coming finally to the psychological theories that have been hypothesized previously. So the learning theory, where people have said that the compulsion is more like a conditioned response that the patients have learned over a period of time, where they start to do the same repeated compulsions to overcome their anxiety. And the psychoanalytic theory that we've read before, where there's this unconscious conflict that's going on between them, and that manifests in itself with symptoms of OCD. So for the psychological theories, the process of treating it would be for the psychoanalytic, they use cognitive behavior therapy, where all the thought errors are corrected. The negative affective thoughts are replaced with positive thoughts, and all the cognitive errors that they have are looked realistically and worked upon. Usually it would be about around 12 to 20 cycles of psychotherapy have been recommended and found to be beneficial. Yeah. Next one. This is just to say hoarding is similar to OCD, but is now classified as a separate condition. And to look at it in a different dimension, we look at what is the difference between hoarding.
it refers to failing to discard items that are of limited value and avoid making a decision. They fail to get rid of things. They start collecting objects that might be of value, if not now, at least some point in the future. But the thing with hoarding is that they don't see that as a problem. In OCD, there could be distress. They do understand that there's a problem. Whereas with hoarding, they don't see it as a problem. It's only the family that finds that this is an issue. So the next slide. Like I said, in OCD, it's ego dystonic, whereas in hoarding, it's ego syntonic. There's also a scale to measure the severity of the hoarding. When they do studies for clinical purposes, these are the scales that they use, the saving inventory. Next one. So coming to the management of OCD, finally we have seen good response. 40 to 60% of patients with OCD do show good response, which is about 25% reduction in their Y-box severity scales that have been seen. Treatment-naive patients are more likely to respond to serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Those who don't respond to the first line of treatment can be tried with a second molecule of a SRI, and usually the dosage is higher than what we use in depression. Yeah, the next one. The duration of treatment, usually it is recommended to treat them for a year and follow up and then gradually taper the medication and observe them. If they have had a repeat of 2 severe episodes or at least 4 or more mild to moderate episodes, then we ask them to continue treatment for life. Yeah, next one. Treatment resistant is when they don't respond to 2 SRIs, and refractory is when they don't respond to more than 2 different modalities of treatment. Yeah. The next one. And lastly, like I said, OCD usually doesn't, we do see a lot of comorbidities because of the common factors involved in its etiology. Among the most common are the depressive disorders. We have found that it's about 67% the comorbidity, and for social phobia it's about 25%. The other conditions are alcohol use disorder, generalized anxiety, specific phobia, panic disorder, eating, and personality disorders. Some of the poorer prognostic conditions are when they have comorbid schizotypal personality, tic disorders like I mentioned, and specific types of obsessions which are slowness, pathological doubting, and checking. This is to summarize the other modalities of treatment. Like I mentioned, apart from pharmacological treatment, we do have ECTs, repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, phototherapy, and sleep deprivation related to the circadian rhythms. They found that even that can help. These are still in the research phase, and DBS is deep brain stimulation, which can be applied to the specific areas of the brain. As mentioned earlier, it could be in the anterior cingulate cortex or in the caudate nucleus, in the anterior capsule. So these studies, these DBS is being done, and we have seen a lot of positive response in patients as well. Neurosurgery like cingulotomy and capsulotomy are also quite popular. These are usually done after about 5 years of trials with other methods of treatment before it can be consented to go ahead with surgical methods. Psychotherapy, the most common is exposure response prevention, and where they're gradually exposed to the obsessive thoughts that they have or the circumstances that they have, and gradually the anxiety will have a peak and then it will plateau down. So over repeated exposures, the peak would tend to come down further until there's a time where it becomes extinct and they don't have a response. So it has shown a lot of positive response in patients. And psychoeducation of the family members is also important, that they don't enable the behavior or give in to the behavior. Yeah. Cognitive therapy, like we said, we correct the cognitive errors that we find in the patients. 12 to 20 sessions generally done. Next one. So the usual things when patients are not responding is, one, to check for compliance with medications or with follow-up or with psychotherapies. Most of the time patients, especially those who do not have insight, are not willing to come, and it's the family that's trying to get them. So engaging with the patient and also the family to bring them for regular follow-ups would make a difference. comorbid conditions, if they're left undiagnosed and untreated, that could be hindering their progress in treatment. Next one. Maintenance treatment, usually we do a monthly follow-up for about 6 months and then we continue the treatment for 1 year. Booster CBT doses can be given, gradual tapering of medication to be done, and like I said, in a lifetime, if treatment may be done, if there are more than 2 recurrences which are severe or 4 recurrences which are mild to moderate, then we would prefer to have them on lifelong treatment. So these are all from purely an allopathic point of view. I'm sure you'll have your own approaches to how you manage them, and collaboratively maybe the outcome may be different. So this is purely from the allopathic studies that I have highlighted these points here. So in summary, I'd like to say that OCD is a complex condition with multifactorial genetic as well as environmental and neurochemical, neuroanatomical inputs which contribute to the symptomatology, and we are looking to have different modalities of treatment and bring about concentrated effect, a multifactorial team which has not just a psychiatrist but also a physician, have a psychotherapist, and even other specialities like we are here today, to integrate them and bring about not just immediate but long-term improvement in patients. Thank you.
Okay, so one of our participants has put a question for JC ma'am. So Dr. Dipti Gilla ma'am has asked a question. Could you please explain how to differentiate OCD from OCPD? What is the prognosis for both disorders? Over to you, ma'am. Can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Yeah. So, I got the question. So, like I said, OCPD is a personality disorder. The level of, in OCD, we have defined as per DSM and ICD, the duration that it takes, we said it's about 1 hour or more. It causes severe socio-occupational dysfunctioning. So, these things are not observed in OCPD. In OCPD, in fact, patients may even see it as a strength. Okay, that they are more orderly, they are more meticulous. Whereas in obsessive compulsive disorder as such, there is definitive impairment in socio-occupational functioning and the time duration that it takes and the severity that it has. Generally in OCPD, the patients are not complaining about it, whereas in OCD, patients themselves would find it quite distressing and want to have relief from their symptoms.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jessie Joseph, for this wonderful session, Obsessive Compulsive Disorders. If we have no more questions from the hall or from online, we can move on to the next session, please. All right. Thank you so much, ma'am. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Madhuri Videswar. Ma'am, we had a break in your session the previous, before the inauguration, so we'd like to continue with that session. Thank you so much. We'll be having this session on holistic approach to mental health in the Indian cultural context in the digital era. So looking at the India as well as the digital era, combining it to the mental health and a holistic approach, I'm sure this would be a very, very interesting session. And simultaneously, I'll also request you all to please fill up the feedback forms which are being sent session-wise so that the feedbacks can be compiled, and by the end of the day, we'll have some, if you have any more questions, we can have that before the lunch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, last session before lunch, but can we keep it a little energetic? I'm going to open the floor. This is really a very thought-provoking topic, and really we were supposed to have another speaker do it, but I think all of us have opinions on this. Interestingly, the discussion that came up, in the previous session on prayers and, the diagnosis of OCD, it is so cultural, in context. I mean, it has to be taken with a knowledge of what sort of community or culture this person comes from, because probably if you know, in fact, in researching this topic, I was reading up a few papers which were written by psychiatrists, American psychiatrists, but of Indian origin. And they talk about how when mental health care is being provided in the US, that one has to be aware of the cultural background that this person comes from, and you know what their origins are, because otherwise, one, you will misdiagnose, or second, you know, you will not provide the adequate care that needs to be given. So this was very interesting because related to the previous session, you know, I was thinking about a scenario where you know, if it's in the US and it's an American, you know, psychiatrist or psychotherapist, and one is reporting ki 108 times, you know, jap kar rahe hain, you know, you're like chanting 108 times, and that is definitely going to be written, I mean, you know, clinically diagnosed, unless it is taken in the context that this is a practice culturally relevant, you know, to our culture, right? So yeah, so we'll just go into this. So we're talking about holistic approaches to mental health in the Indian cultural context in the digital era. That's a lot of that's a lot of criteria specifically. But yeah, so first itself to, you know, define the concept of culture, where we're talking about beliefs, feelings and behaviors and basic values of a community or of a particular region, right? And what the culture, whatever it basically was, constantly it's a dynamic process. It changes, it is affected by social relationships, by economics, religion, philosophy, and of course technology today, right? Technology is literally redefining what culture is. Can we go on? Yeah. So an example I wanted to start with, which we all understand, which we've all seen, is the concept of yoga. Something that is a very traditional, you know, form of exercise or even mental well-being in India, where we know it provides exercise to the physical body, it calms the mind, and it focuses on the breath, right? And today it is online. So this is a perfect example connecting the entire, I mean, something that has culturally been handed down, something that's a great practice for mental well-being, and it is connected in the digital era today, right? In fact, I think the best thing that happened in the past few years has been yoga going online, right? Because now we see, even in the geriatric population, we see that many, you know, 70 plus, 75 plus people are accessing yoga therapy online through their phones. They access yoga classes regularly, right? So it definitely becomes a part of our well-being. Now let's look at a few other concepts. So one is meditation and mindfulness, you know, what we were previously talking about. We'll wrap up that session if we can later or tomorrow. But meditation and mindfulness, these are concepts which have been very ingrained part of Indian culture, to even say that, you know, 10 minutes sit down every morning and just, you know, try to not have any thoughts. But if you're not able to switch off, you're not able to go into not having thoughts, then, you know, you chant something until you get to a point where there are no thoughts. Right? That was really the concept. And like Mrs. Usha also mentioned earlier, everything today is taken in the context of religion. But really, if you can dissociate that, it was best practices, you know, which are also advised today for mental well-being. Next. So let's look at some interesting, you know, correlations. I mean, really, when I was looking up this topic, I was hoping Dr. Gangadhar of Nimhans, who's, you know, highly experienced person, would be talking about this. But when I was reading up about it, these are the things that came up. So he said, you know, today in modern psychotherapy, or you know, when we're looking at mental health, creating social connections is a very, very advised, you know, topic, right? To say, create social connections, don't isolate, you know, meet with people whom you relate with and feel good. So that is really the concept of satsang that we have. And then this is across religions, right? Whichever religion it is, you get together, you pray, you're eating good food, the prasad or langar that we said, and then you're saying that's a good serotonin release. It's a feel-good factor, but it also emotionally and mentally, it is nurturing your well-being, right? So this was something which we had, which we are losing. Now when you look at the urban setup across India, who has the time, right? All our satsangs are happening online. It happens with Instagram. That's where our satsangs are, yeah? That's where we're looking for social connections, right? So, and that is where we're also losing a lot of the focus. And we're going to be talking tomorrow also in the adolescent, mental health session, where we're saying if most of what I think is, the ideal body image is coming from an Instagram, post, then I'm not going to look around me and look at reality, right? So we really have to balance between what are our practices culturally and this digital era that we're going into. And I think the biggest challenge is keeping young people grounded in what was culturally relevant, right? Did I miss something? Can you just go back? Yeah. So the other concept of course, again today Western psychotherapy talks about focusing on others, or when you help or you volunteer, that you're nurturing your own mental well-being. And this is the concept of seva that we have, right? So a lot of cultures across India, a lot of places, there is this concept of you go to your place of worship and you either volunteer or you help out, right? These are concepts which have been practiced for many generations. And for example, back in our organization today, we get a lot of youngsters, young people from colleges to volunteer with our organization, so that in that volunteering, when you go in for a session of counseling as a young person, what you're given largely is advice, but when you actually volunteer and you're seeing other people who are disadvantaged, it gives you a very different perspective. And we have seen a lot of parents report a lot of change in the process of volunteering that the youngster goes through. Yeah, and of course with community celebrations. I mean, we have Dashera coming up, we have Durga Puja. The entire concept of bringing community together to promote well-being, right? This is something which is, I think, of course, a lot of the ancient cultures have it, but also very uniquely Indian concept. And we have it across, like, so many festivals, across so many religions. And this is something that, again, are we losing touch with, especially our young people, right? If you see, it's going to be very important to actually keep them grounded and rooted in these cultures. Yeah. So this was an interesting paper that I found. It is Gautam S. Jain, Indian Culture and Psychiatry. So this is, talks about, so if we accept that psychotherapy is basically, helping people, where you're sitting with a psychotherapist and they're giving you good advice, or you're taking your problems to them and they're able to give you therapy, and that helps the problems that you go through. He draws a parallel to the Guru Shishya Parampara that we have in India, right? So across religions, we have the concept of going to a guru and sharing your problems. Again, we are talking, so he says, is this traditional psychotherapy, right? Where the guru advises the student, or whoever has come to them with a problem, and says, maybe you could use this. So is this psychotherapy that we have practiced since the Vedic times? This is a very interesting paper. The other few interesting things I found in this was, he says that they did a study on cancer survivors, and they found that Indians tend to accept a diagnosis of cancer more easily because of the concept of karma. Okay, so like I said, I'm quoting from this, right? I'm quoting directly off this paper. I can share this with you. It's a very interesting read and very interestingly interpreted data. But yeah, so this is one of the things. And the other things they also talk about is something as simple as the Panchatantra stories, which were there traditionally, are meant to be psychotherapy for children, where you are actually passing on examples of how do you deal with problems and come away with a good mental health. Yeah. Yeah, so this was the thing I already talked about, cancer. Yeah. So in the same paper, he talks about how our spirituality and faith gives us an edge, an edge in better mental health over the West, right? And because a lot of our religions, our faith systems talk about giving gratitude, they talk about unconditional love, you know. So it doesn't seem far off in a day when a lot of our faith and belief could actually go into a DSM classification of disease, yeah, if you look at it in a certain way. But when we look at our own, mental health status versus the West, I think the evidence is definitely there that being rooted in faith and spirituality gives you the extra edge. So the other concept the same paper talks about is giving gratitude, right? Which is giving thanks to, just being thankful. I mean, being thankful right in this moment that we are talking about this with this audience, and being very rooted in giving gratitude, whether it's for a small thing or for a big thing, right? So this is me being very thankful for you as an audience. I'm going to invite you at this point to share some thoughts, because I specifically left some ideas open. There were a few more things. There is music and art-based therapy, for example, which today is being recommended as therapeutic. But if you look at our traditional arts and music and dance forms, where regular practice is the concept, the practice of sadhana, right? The concept of sadhana, that is also today being talked about as psychotherapy, right? So there are a lot of concepts like that, but I would like the audience to share also your views on this. So I'm going to open up the floor. Thank you so much for hearing. So would anybody like to share? Can we just hand across the mic?
That's a very interesting discussion that we've had, and since you mentioned about Panchatantra, the idea of, the idea of storytelling, bringing about stories, take you beyond religion, but it's a more cultural adaptation to something that children or anybody can relate to. And that is one thing that I feel, stories is the first form of conversation that was supposed to happen between grandparents and the children, and the entire idea of wellness somewhere stems from that, because that is what gives us a connect to the society that we are living in, and then gradually how things happen into it. So apart from the regular dance forms or something like that, I think that is a very interesting aspect, and that is what you're losing once you're in a nuclear family setup. That is that connect goes missing, because the parents are more directional in approach rather than creative in approach. And that is where the childhood and the adolescent wellness affects. And as we age, we lose our touch with stories. That is one thing that we lose. We do create our own stories with whatever circumstances we have, but that is something that we lose touch with, and that is where I think we lose our, we start, losing our wellness question. That was one idea that came in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point, because, today there are therapists who do story-based therapy, right? We have sessions for children where you have storytellers, who are brought in. So it's a nice way. We also work with schools. We work with special schools, bringing in storytellers to work with the children, because, we're losing this culturally at home. Yeah, so great point. Thank you for sharing. Would anybody else like to share?
I have one more view here. Holistic approach, because earlier there were joint families and the traditional way of practicing by the entire family. And now in present era it is nuclear family. So what we do is we direct, but we don't follow. And basically in today's era, children, they are more digital based, and that connectivity between the parent and the child, because we know, as we say, the common proverb, charity begins at home. What we don't do at home, we cannot expect, and we cannot translate it to the children and thereby promote their mental health. Mental health. So what we do, the child follows us, and they also react in a similar way. So these all things are again strong interconnected things. Definitely culture plays a lot. Like in earlier days, there were chantings, there was Gita being read by the entire family, slokas being read and made us understand. But now those things are being diverted because of digital, because of a lot of work pressure and travels, everything. So these are again to be imbibed in this digital era.
Yeah.
Then only we can have that holistic mental well-being. Else, it is quite tough in this competitive era where we compare within ourselves and also with others.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So one of the very valid points is, the breakdown of the joint family. So just in terms of the support that was available at home, whether, even for us as, working women, when we look at how did we bring up our children, what was the kind of support available, I think things have changed so rapidly that it definitely will affect mental health. It creates more stress, more anxiety, right? So that's something that we have let go of, but again, what is the option? I mean, there are certain areas in which you have to move forwards, and it should not, adapting our culture should not feel like a step backward, right? But we have to make sure we keep some of it as we go forward, right? So that's one thing. And anybody else who would like to share?
I don't know, because I wasn't there for a major part of the session, so I don't know whether I'll be repeating a little bit of it. So my point is that, no matter how much we try for working parents, when both parents are working, so digital devices, they are kind of, sometimes an asset to us. Like, sometimes if the children have missed their school, they will use their screens to copy the homework and things like that. And other things like, sometimes you get recommendations from school itself that, okay, why don't you watch this YouTube link? And out there, so today's generation is also very inquisitive. And parents today don't have ready answers for things. And they're, like we had Tell Me Why books series, no? So their Tell Me Why book series is basically the YouTube and the other, there's something called Omsum series and all those things where kids go to for answers, and the questions are very complicated for us to answer today. So, for example, my daughter, she gets most of the answers that she has in her head from the YouTube, and like she is a space enthusiast. So I mean, there are some, good factors within the digital devices that the kids are learning from, picking things from. So where do you think should we be, drawing a line in terms that you cannot really wish this away? So they have the devices in their hands, they're using it as a good tool or a bad tool. And the impact, what are the initial signs to know that they're not getting addicted to it? That they're using it and they're misusing it also to an extent, but that they're not addicted. What are the initial trigger or initial pick points that we can refer to?
Yeah. So I think a major part of what you asked is going to be covered tomorrow morning session on addiction to substance and device by Mrs. Usha. But I'm going to just take up a part of that. Look, in context to what we were just talking about, where we're talking about culture in the digital era, devices are the way forward. I mean, we've adapted, and for our children's generation, it is a part of their lives, right? For us, it was new, but for them, they were born into this generation when there are already devices, and we are also allowing pretty much devices to run our, lives. Like if I ask all of you to leave your mobiles back in the room for the first session tomorrow morning, I guarantee you nobody's going to show up to the session, correct? So it is a fact, whether we like it or not, that devices pretty much run our lives. I think with our children, drawing this line, that is one of the key things that we're going to have to do. But what we generally do with children is that that there needs to be certain time limits to using, devices. But second, coming back to the cultural aspect, does the child have some hobbies or some activities which are not connected to a device? Okay, maybe connected to a device, but which are connected to a hobby. A hobby is something you're learning. It could be a sport, it could be music, dance, art form, any of these, right? Which will give them some sort of an emotional and I mean it contributes to emotional mental well-being. It could be an online class, so maybe you're in front of a device, but then the practice of that regularly itself is very stimulating to well-being, right? So we have to adapt devices. I have mine here, all of you can flash yours also, yeah, but they're a part of our life. I mean, really it's, I think to our kids it's going to be like, you know, a limb, right? We have 4 limbs, they're going to have a 5th one, right? And that's in fact, on really busy weeks, I keep saying my ear is going to grow a, you know, headphone now, one of the AirPods, right? But that's how it is. But are we grounding them in at least something cultural? Like to me, or maybe a lot of you will relate to this, if my way of maybe dealing with an anxiety would be to either maybe sing or, you know, read, or maybe sing to myself a bhajan or something, right? Which maybe I have seen my previous generations do, maybe I've seen my grandmother do it, or, you know, and I felt that it was a nice way to deal with anxiety, to let it go, right? But today, if you see, our first instinct will be, let me just go on Instagram and just do this, so, you know, I'm blocking off everything. So you're not actually channelizing the anxiety, right? We're not channelizing the anxiety, we're just distracting from it. But on the other hand, if you go for a walk, or you actually sing, or you read, maybe reading of course could be questioned, but these are channelizing your negative or, you know, difficult feelings into a positive, in a positive way, right? But a device does not give you that. So are we building this? So technically what we're talking about is we need to capacity build in our children to actually deal with emotions, right? Or to have some sort of a cultural, you know, something that we've been practicing for a long time to fall back on in times of stress or, you know, difficulty, while they are living happily with their devices. I think that is something we're going to have to make our peace with. And where we draw the line on, or how do you recognize addiction, I think Mrs. Usha will cover in the morning. Yeah. Thank you. So great. I think that means we're ready for lunch. Thank you so much. Thank you for that patient listening. Yeah.
I don't think that we as organizers are ready for lunch yet.
Okay.
So the time for lunch today was, I think, around, so yeah, we have our sessions till 2 p.m.
Yeah.
So we are a little half an hour early.
Yeah.
So I think we can resume the mindfulness that we were doing,
Sure.
you know, before the inaugural ceremony. I think we're very keen to follow that up. Yeah.
Is everybody keen? Hands up on the keen. Okay, great. All right, let me come off stage and take that mic. Okay, so are you all in the groups that you were in? Can you get back into those groups in which the discussions happened? All right, so what we did was we had one person who shared, and they were listened to mindfully, I hope, okay? And then we had one person who listened as a physician, one person who listened as a family member, and one more person who listened as a good friend, correct? Yeah, okay. So first, I'd like a few of the people who shared their problems to talk about your experience. Don't talk about your problem, but talk about your experience. If every time you actually face something, if there were 3 people who were listening mindfully to you, what would it feel like? And what was the experience like for you? So who'd like to share? Yeah, you'd like to. Yeah, so everybody please go ahead and share. Yeah, please. So here's the question. The question is, if you were sharing the problem. I mean, you were sharing a problem, and everybody was mindfully listening to you. Okay. I saw some interesting body language while you were all sharing. There were a few people who were really trying not to talk, and because I said don't give advice, you know, I actually saw this body language. I should put this down. I saw that. I'm not going to point out the table, but I saw that multiple places, like saying, oh, it said not to talk, so I'm not going to give advice, because it's so ingrained in us that if somebody's telling you a problem, I get you, yes, 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 so here's what you need to do, right? So this is how we tend to react, but I want to know what was your feeling like. We're talking about, so just to go back, we're talking about when we as listeners, or we're doing mindful listening, we wear different hats. I could be listening at any point in time, either as a physician, or I could be listening from a place of bias. I'd like to bring this up right now. So just in this session we covered, right? We could have been listening from a place of bias, or of prejudice, or we could have been listening from a very rigid point of view, right? So if I have some very different thoughts on the discussion we had, or any of the discussions we had today, my brain is not just, listening is not just the act of, sound entering, it's the processing of that information, correct? So if you come from a place of bias, you will take the session very differently. The emotions that come inside of you are also going to be very different, right? So this is the overall context. Now, let's have some sharing and we'll come back and talk.
So I was sharing my problem, what I was feeling yesterday, and how I was able to cope it up. Because whenever we have some headache, if I take the example of a headache also, it sometimes goes extreme. And ultimately we land into taking pills and we have to take full rest. But with mindfulness and with positive thoughts on that issue which you are facing right now, it enables the peak to reduce very quickly. So this is what I was sharing with them, what happened with me yesterday, my headache, my anxiety levels, how I was able to cope up, and how I was able to not to take any pill. No.
And how was your experience of them listening
when I was talking to them, they were very mindful. They were listening to my problem very seriously, in a focused attention, which again makes me...
Without looking at their phones.
Yes, of course. Yeah. It was a few seconds, not that the entire thing she was on her phone, some seconds. So this again gives some kind of relief also to me.
Yeah, so it is therapeutic.
That, yes, I am being listened.
Yes.
My problem is being listened, and maybe in the non-conscious mind or subconscious mind, I think I'm getting some solution. I expect some solution which I'll be getting after this, my talk. So this is what my thought was.
So technically what we were really doing here was really the concept of a support group, right? The entire concept of support groups in, even from the point of view of psychology, works this way, where it is mindful listening, mindful, non-judgmental, and a safe space to share, right? That is the concept of a support group, yeah? And really, for us, support groups, maybe we don't go sit in a support group, but we form our own support groups who are our friends and families and somebody we tend to confide in, right? So this is really it's very therapeutic. It can be extremely healing, it can promote wellness, right? But are we talking? And are we doing mindful listening? Yeah? Okay, anybody else would like to share? Yes.
First of all, ma'am, thank you so much for this session and the activities we are doing together. And for that, I have got a chance to sit with Dr. Devdatta Nayak sir. And I have got a wonderful group here, Dr. Boydurja, who listen very carefully as physician, Dr. Nargis as my family member, and obviously Nayak sir as my friend. And three of them actually listened my problem, which I was going through from past 2 days. three of them listened to that very carefully without any verbal communication. I was able to convey my problems to them. And I received very nice messages from them. And the coolest message was from Nayak sir, as my friend, chalo chai peene chalta hai. So that made me very relaxed, and I think it was really a great session. Even after that, conversation on our group, I was feeling very much relaxed after talking to three of them. So it was very much relaxing for me. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, that's interesting. So this whole chai peene chalte hain, this is the entire point of making connections, having friendships, right? I mean, it seems like one more sharing and then we'll go to, what the listeners felt like. One more participant. Yes, please. We have a mic.
Good afternoon, ma'am. It was a nice session going on. I explained my problem to my, as you said, the doctor, to my friend, to my relative, and it was a little bit, I'm not talking about the problem now, but it might be a little bit something very ridiculous also regarding the problem. But it was appearing to me that this is a problem. They might laugh after listening to it, but no, they listened to that carefully and gave patience hearing and responded accordingly. And that really gave a calm, they gave a very positive response regarding the problem. So that's much. Thank you.
Yeah, so that brought up a very interesting point where you said, I thought people might laugh at my problem, it sounds ridiculous. Because I think this is what a lot of patients who eventually come to us actually go through, right? Because not just the thought of ridicule, but the thought of, do I sound crazy? Am I going crazy? Do I sound like, am I going to be, sidelined? Or will I be misunderstood? Yeah, will I be labeled, right? So I think there are a lot of barriers like this that even we will personally face. But I think it's very important to make a patient feel very comfortable in that space of sharing, right? Of course, as homeopaths, when we do listen and with our history taking, we are already very focused towards mindful listening. But sometimes our own prejudices do come into play, right? However much we try, our prejudice could come into play. And second thing is, maybe we do the mindful listening at clinic, we go back home, and then we shut off, right? So the question comes, what about the well-being of my own family? So for example, one of the very common things we see is in families where there is a doctor, it is usually the parents, like the older generation, who will have very chronic, very ongoing ailments, very chronic issues. Because it almost becomes a point of, okay, now they're back from a busy schedule, I want to just sit and have a conversation. But unless I come up with a health problem, they're not going to listen. So we actually have a lot of doctors who report this, and we've seen it across. There's so many allopathic specialists who will also say, I can deal with the whole world, but I can't deal with my own family, right? Because nothing seems to work. But when they do go into, say, they take a holiday together and things like that, they'll actually report, oh, things were so much better. Why was my father better when I took a vacation with him? Right? So something to just think about, yeah, with our own, families, yeah. Okay. Now, somebody who listened as a physician, would you like to share how this experience was different because you could not give a solution immediately, or you had to listen and then do a quick wrap up in 30 seconds. Anybody who'd like to talk about it?
I think my experience was different first because I knew that she herself is a physician. So I was like, because what she was saying also had a remedy to it. So she was telling a problem and also telling a solution. Like she said, I was having, can I share the problem? Okay. So like she was saying that I'm having headaches, and probably it was related to the anxiety that I was having, related to a couple of things. And then I did not really still have my, she was having a headache. She did not took any medicine for that. She kind of tried to come out of it on her own, and then she was able to, and this and that. So she was telling the solution within it. And I think I already knew that she had a solution. It's just that it's very human to have this anxiety, and then, but then if I think we have an advantage of kind of understanding what's going on within our head and why and whether, and also being hopeful that we can find a solution to it. So I thought my job was half done. So I did not really had that urge to speak that much, which I would rather have had because of my own personality, or because of a normal patient, non-medico patient. So that was my experience with it.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. So I think something interesting I want you all to reflect upon is look back to your own relationships, whether it's with your parents or your spouse or your children or people around you, and think about those conversations where somebody's sharing something and you tend to give a lot of advice, right? Where you're talking a lot when somebody else is sharing, or you're sidelining what they're saying, because that is a total opposite experience. Here, you're coming from a very empowered place, one, being a physician and also knowing that she has resources. Now, when we're listening to somebody else, can we, and again, we're talking about well-being, so we're talking about ourselves and our, close circles. Can we, or do we at any point assume that this person talking to me has the internal resources to solve their own problem? Usually, that's not the case. We say, oh, and we're all like, oh, not again. They always do this, like, this is what Shad said earlier in the day, they always do this. Oh, this story again, or this problem again. I know their patterns, right? This is the reaction that tends to come inside of us, right? But this level of mindfulness, mindful listening, can you do can you take back to at least one of your key relationships? I'd just like you to reflect for a moment and think about, and because so many times, even in our conversation, say with children, right? Either they're back from school or college or whatever it is, and they're saying something, and you're immediately, probably your anxiety level goes up or your stress level goes up. Yeah, and then you're coming from a place of fear, you're coming from a place of, oh my God, what is this? Maybe they come back home and they're talking about something their friend did, or somebody who had a problem in school or college. But are we doing mindful listening? We are jumping to conclusions. We have, probably VPS shot up. Yeah? Yeah. Instructions, panic. Yes, exactly. So can you practice mindful listening with your children? Mindful listening only happens when parent is on the phone, because they're so busy with the phone that they're going to allow the child to talk, right? So is that mindful or completely mindless listening, not even listening? Yeah, correct. So can we practice this with our children, because it can be very empowering. So when you actually listen to somebody, allow them to speak, and you might have faced this, like, you have something you need to think through, and you start talking to somebody. If they actually let you talk, you'll come up with your own solutions eventually. Correct? You actually, you self-resolve whatever that was, and you say, oh, this was a great idea. And then the person opposite says, I didn't give you the idea, you brought it up all on your own, right? So it's very, very precious thing. If you have somebody who does mindful listening, around you, go back and thank them, give gratitude, extremely important, right? Okay, one person who was a family member, can you share your experience of listening, mindful listening? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Being a family member to listen a problem, first of all, is a painful. Because some of the family member is having a problem, And at a first instance, you can't give a solution. You can be remedial, as you asked, you can express yourself and give a solution in a 30 seconds. It's very easy to give a solution in 30 seconds, to say, okay, do this, do's and don'ts, do this and don't do this, it will help you. But somehow I feel that being a family member or a parent, it affects you a lot, and you think anybody of your family members is in pain, and you should resolve it and make efforts so that that person gets out of it. I think so it requires some more of thinking and getting it implemented practically.
So thank you for that. But I'm going to say something here. So as a listener, and this happens to us in so many situations, only professionally we're very trained to listen to whatever it is that your patient is sitting and telling you without your expression even changing like one little bit. But when it comes to a family member, it could be something very simple. But then the emotions that come in, that rise within us, it could come, like we said, from fear, anxiety, that it could be so much accumulated fear and anxiety that it comes up, somebody's telling you a problem, they just want you to listen, but if we break down into tears, or we get very angry, or we start showing an emotion, it's not going to help that person in front of us, right? So if somebody around, in your family, does this send them to either another homeopath or another counselor, or don't listen, yeah, because it's just going to make things worse for them, yeah? So something to reflect upon, yeah? Okay, somebody who listened as a good friend, somebody would like to share? Yes, sir?
It is actually it is good to listen to a friend where you feel, because it is always you feel worthy when you listen to a friend who feels that you are of that, they feel you are a friend close to me, they can share it. So it is just like that. Many times we are doing that also in our day-to-day professional circle also. Maybe they are our juniors, maybe mostly juniors, those who are working with us. So that I did simply to relax, to divert their mind from that situation at present, so that they can feel that something, somebody is there who can lean upon. So that is the...
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's a good point. So in fact, what he is describing, I think, is the role of a mentor or, a peer group, where again, listening or, continuous sharing can happen with a non-judgmental listening, right? So that is very, very valuable, especially to young people. If you are able to find support like that, either in education or workspace, it will actually promote well-being, right? And again, this need not, I think what you were also talking about, not just being a very good friend, it's also just being like in a group and, you have like an acquaintance, or you might have students, or you might just have people but it definitely promotes well-being like that, right? Okay, so I'd like you all to just put down in your notebooks one takeaway personally for yourself from this session. One thing you're going to change in terms of mindful listening, once you go back to your families, okay? One thing you're going to change for yourself. I'm not going to ask you to share this, so you can write whatever. I'm going to listen more to my spouse. I'm going to listen more to my child, or, I will try and practice mindfulness with, don't do it with your neighbor unless they're a good friend, okay? Sometimes, the longest conversations we tend to have is when your neighbor is cribbing to you about your dog not having cleaned up behind your dog, or, milk wala ne, doodh wala nahi aaya, that sort of thing, yeah? But then you come back, as soon as you come back, your kids are probably saying, wait, she listened to that person, or maybe she'll listen to me. But you have to rush in and pick up the phone and say, oh, that thing is waiting, something else is going on, yeah? So one thing that you are going to change for yourselves in terms of mindful listening, you can put it on your phones or you can put it in your notebook, but just put it down, and when you go back home to your families in the next couple of days, see if you can bring it up and practice it. Yeah? Let's take a minute to do it. Yeah.
I have a doubt. That is a good thing which we have learned today is the mindful listening, and definitely we'll do that. But it's my personal experience only. What if the other person don't stop talking? Because that is the big issue sometimes. Personally,
Yeah, very fair point. Does somebody else want to answer that? Yeah. So there is the one, one of the things that I practice is called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And one of the basic tenets of that is the only person I can change is myself. Yeah? I can't change the person opposite me, right? It's all about taking responsibility for my own actions. So yes, I'm sure there are people who would love to, talk continuously. And again, when we talk about mindful listening, okay, let me ask you this. If you had a patient, walk into your clinic, you have a room full of people, patients waiting, and you have that one person who you know is going to talk a lot. 10 minutes into the consultation or even before they walk in, you know what you're going to prescribe, but then they're going to talk for that, 40 minutes, and the 45th minute you're like, no, but at that moment, what are you going to do?
in our organon also, we have all the things we are advised how to deal with such patients, like, because we cannot stop their train of thoughts also. We have to tactfully intervene and stop them, maybe put up a question so that they can, when they wander off to some other topic, they'll come back to it. That way is fine. But like the scenario which we are talking about, for the outcome which we are looking here in, like the demonstration we just did, it was more of a personal and family oriented thing. In a clinic, in a patient, when we are looking at, then we have all those things and we try to do that. But when we are not into that, like we cannot just abruptly stop the other person. So, and sometimes some few people are totally opposite. They will not speak more than one line, like in patients for that matter. So that's how we handle it based on whatever knowledge we have gained through homeopathy, organon of medicine. Yeah. But personally, we can help.
Yeah. So one of the things is, when you listened so the different types of listening we did, right? One, we listened as a physician. We come from a place of internal resourcefulness, which means I'm used to dealing with it, I know how to deal with it, I will know what to do, right? If I don't know a solution, I'll come up with a way to provide a solution, okay? But when we listen as a family member, it's the most frustrating experience. Like we already saw in the sharing, because a lot of emotion comes up and you're not feeling resourceful, meaning you're feeling very unempowered, like I can't help, I'm listening to the same thing all over again. So it's not just what they're saying, but it's about what I'm feeling, right? So you really will have to think about, if I was objectively looking at this conversation, okay? Or if somebody else came to me in my clinical setup and they were reporting this, what would I advise them to do, right? We think through this in different scenarios, right? But in mindful listening, it is very, very important to dissociate yourself from the problem when you're thinking about it, right? And then you will come up with some strategy to actually deal with this, yeah? And also practice mindful talking, right? I'm very mindfully talking that we have exactly 1.5 minutes before I can hand back and say lunch, but mindful talking, because sometimes even when we're talking about our problems, if we keep talking about it, the 5th time that we repeat our cribs about the problem, it gets worse. The feeling within me of frustration, anger will come up, right? So I think one of the things that is suggested is that when you have to say something good about anything, okay, say 5 things about it, or say it in 5 sentences. If you have a crib, you have a problem, say it in 1 sentence. That's a self-regulatory mechanism, right? Where we are also, and once you start applying it for yourself, you can try apply it for people around you. You can't say it to your kids and then say, no, don't crib so much, and then the next thing you know, you're standing and cribbing to somebody else, right? And I mean, especially when it comes to children, but also family members, keep in mind that when you're communicating on the phone and you're going on repeating something, you're talking to somebody, some unrelated topic, but you're cribbing constantly, they're there listening to you. And children are excellent in mindful listening because exactly when you don't want them to listen, they're doing hyper mindful listening. Correct? Yeah. Those exact times when you're trying to very quietly have an argument and, try to talk in some other language so they'll not understand, they will learn that language. They have done such mindful listening. Yeah. Quietly having an argument. So, yeah. Yeah. No, you're trying to, yeah. No, you're trying to not get your kids to listen to that argument, right? Yeah, no. So for example, you're arguing about your opinion about what you're going to do with the child, whatever, some school trip you're not going to allow, you're going to allow, right? Those arguments, they will just super mindfully listen through walls also, they'll listen, right? So keep that in mind. So it's so important. Sometimes we don't realize what sort of habits and what sort of thought process we are creating in our children, right? And the worst scenario sometimes, at least I face, and I'm sure a lot of you face, is if you're taking a patient call in front of your children, right? You're picking up that call and you're giving certain advice and you don't realize these kids are around, right? Because they are very capable of turning around and quoting to you, you said this to your patient that day, I'm doing it, what is your problem? Right? So you have to be careful, right? I'm sorry, somebody had a question, yeah.
Ma'am, as clinicians, we face a different kind of problem at our family. Like when we are seeing at the clinic, we know what is the problem, what is the solution, does that even need a medicine, or does that even need a solution to the patient or not? We are quite aware of that. Now when we come back to our home and our family members say the same problem, which we think that there is no solution required, it will go off just like that. So as a physician, when our role changes to a family member, it gets quite difficult to convince the opposite person in our family who does not have the knowledge of that medical background to say that, oh, it is not a problem, you don't have to worry about it, you don't have to think much about it. And it is quite natural for us that we are hearing 100 things a day. When a family member comes with a trivial problem, we often tend to not to listen. And this is a matter which further causes argument or any kind of problem or defect out there in the family.
Yeah. So that's a great observation. Thank you for sharing, because this is precisely what I wanted all of you to recognize in yourselves, that this is something that we live through, right? All of us. And it can actually be detrimental to our own relationships, right? So 2 ways to look at it. One, make sure your family is treated by one of your friends, your colleagues, another homeopath, right? So they're offloading there, yeah, you have that support for them. But second thing is mindful listening. A simple thing you can do is, when you get into this frustration, is to say your spouse, children, parent, whoever, say, let's go for a walk and talk about this. If you really want to talk about it and you think that problem is worth it, let's go for a walk, come for a walk with me. Okay, so it's going to be physically, healthy for everybody. And in the process, so if you actually see, when we talk about mindful listening, if your body is engaged in some sort of repetitive activity, your mind also becomes more receptive, right? And you also get into a more resourceful place, right? So just try this. It's a walk and talk. It's actually a concept, yeah? Walk and talk and walk and listen, yeah? So even if you're having a very stressful conversation, like oh my gosh, this is going to lead to an argument, definitely, and I can't sleep tonight, or I might as well have stayed 2 more hours at clinic, right? So if that is your reaction, try this. Walk and talk, or some sort of, if it's children, you can actually get them to sit on a swing or some sort of movement, like even that gym, that bouncy ball that you have, you'll actually find, and we work with this with children with ADHD, their listening powers are much better if they're actually in movement, right? Yes, exactly. No, actually it's a vestibular need. where if you're moving, then you're a lot more receptive, right? So try this, yes.
As a emotional well-being counselor, we do come across cases like this where our client talk more than required or more than the time we have to give for them. And coming back to the family again, people go on repeating, particularly elders. And it is a very common feature when there are nuclear families because there are hardly any listeners for that generation. So they go on repeating the same story. So at that time we teach, it comes under a kind of assertive skills training also, wherein we know beyond that time if it is going repeatedly, then we go to the validation of the feeling what they are trying to convey. So the moment you rephrase that and say that, yeah, I listen to you, you need to say this is what is bothering you, that completely shifts from just repeating to looking at the solution. So by kind of modulating the conversation style and underlying the feelings behind the talk, we already come to the solution phase. So there we work together. This actually works out very well.
Yeah, thank you. So are we good to wrap up? Yes. Yes, absolutely. So thank you all. Thank you for that absolutely mindful listening session. Thank you.
I thought we will all be very excited that the day has ended, but somehow I think we are all disappointed that the day has ended. It's been a wonderful, wonderful day, and we have been, able to grasp so many new things. Not grasp, if I can't call it grasp, at least got sensitized to so many new concepts of mental health and of, dealing with our professional and personal commitments. So I think we are only looking forward to tomorrow. That is bringing us more concepts and introducing us to a lot more things that we can use at our clinic and at our homes. So thank you so much for patient listening and for the, for the wonderful talks today. And we would be now concluding today's sessions, and tomorrow we would again be starting right at, I think it's 8:15 for tomorrow. Is it 8? Can you check in the program? 15 past 8. And unlike today, please be on time so that we can again wrap it well and we can do the takeaway sessions, session, which is going to be again very interactive on time. We have enough time for that session as well. So requesting all of you to proceed for lunch now, and thank you all for your time, and requesting everyone, the viewers and as well as all the delegates, to please fill the feedback forms. We don't have many responses yet. Every session feedback will help us understand what are the concepts actually that we should be taking further for detailed discussions and learning. So please give your feedback for every session, and we're waiting for your feedbacks. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Thanks to the online viewers as well. Thank you.